Welcome to our weekly Q&A show where we answer submitted questions live on YouTube on Tuesdays at 2 p.m.
Well, Aaron, good to see you. It looks like Steve's even joining us today.
Yeah, I've got all the answers.
Good. Welcome, everyone, to our Tuesday Q&A show. This is where we get questions throughout the week. I had questions on my personal Facebook account, on Instagram, some through Whitewater Guidebook, some by email, and somehow we gathered them all together in one place to answer them. And just as a reminder to everybody watching, the easiest way to give us questions is easier for us because we can better keep track of them and answer them as quick as possible is to go to the Gear Garage tab on Whitewater Guidebook and click Ask a Question or Add a Comment. This is the place to do it. You'll also see a rafting forum. You could ask it there. There's been a few questions there. That's maybe a quicker way to get the question answered is on the forum. And with that, you guys ready for the first question?
Do it.
All right.
Woo.
So this is a 2-pager. And I'm going to read these so people listening can hear. I'm going to try to read these. I have a 16-foot air double diminished tubes raft. I really don't like double diminished tubes rafts. But anyway, that's your call. That is great for multi-days and taking a bunch of friends out on paddling trips, but it is annoyingly big to take out myself. I'd like something I can manage myself to more. Guys, I'm learning how to read too. I'd like something I can manage myself to more easily join up with other people for day trips, push myself on tighter, more technical runs, and have options for off-season low water trips. I live in Idaho. Should I get a small raft, a cat, or just learn to kayak? Learn to kayak. If you just want to go boating, like when you go kayaking, you just get a kayak and you throw it in a truck and you go boating. With a raft or a cat, you got to pump it up. You need a trailer probably, which means you need a garage. Aaron, you're on mute, by the way. We can't hear anything you're saying.
No wonder. Hey, what's the second page of this? Are we addressing this, or do we need to read the second page before we start answering?
I don't know.
The question?
Oh, yeah, this is different, off topic. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to say, if you're a superstar athlete like Zach, yeah, become a whitewater kayaker.
I'm not a superstar athlete.
You're a mere mortal like many of the rest of us. Like kayaking, the learning curve on kayaking can be brutal. So, I mean, if you're young and willing to get beat down and trash them, then I would say learn to whitewater kayak. If you're not willing to do that, then I would suggest other options. And I think a great option is, first of all, is having an inflatable kayak for the later season, off season, low water trip type of stuff. Those are fun. They're not as committing as a hard shell, and you can still, it's like the moped versus the motorcycle. It doesn't look as cool, but it's almost as fun and works better in certain situations. So that's my feeling about the kayak part of it. Steve, what's your thought?
I think the inflatable kayak thing is a really interesting idea as like an interim next step. Like you're not committing all the way to the inflated side, and you're going to be able to get on more trips and to see if you want to learn to kayak. Like maybe for one season, try the inflatable kayak thing. I think that'd be a really interesting little twist. There is nothing as spontaneous as kayaking. Even a small cat, small raft, you're talking a lot more crap that you're going to have to bring with you and a lot more impact you're going to have on anybody that invites you to go. You get invited to join a bunch of rafters, you bring your kayak, you are zero impact on that. Come with a bunch of other kayakers, you fit right in. If you get invited to go on a day trip with a bunch of kayakers and you show up with a small raft or a cat, you become a little bit of a burden to that, right?
Yes.
I can't believe you just
go ahead. I don't want them there. I'm like, oh, come on. Now we have to carry your raft for you. And
yeah,
we have to like put it on your truck and wait for you to pump it up. Like it's a whole thing. I don't want to spend my day because of one rafter do all the work to help them. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't.
Let's back up though. Did Steve just say that kayakers are zero burden to rafters?
Yeah. At put in as far as like that impact on the trip. Yes, I know that was hard to say.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything after that. I just heard that. And I was like, wait, what? So
I think the inflatable kayak thing has a place right here. It's a really small investment. Like you can probably pick one up for less than $500 used somewhere.
You probably shouldn't pay that little for one, but I'd spend maybe $1,000 at least. You get what you pay for with those things.
But I think you could find a used one somewhere for $500. It's going to do they'll do just fine for a year. And then you're learning those kayaking skills. So if you do decide you want to become a hardshell kayaker, you're ahead of the game. And if you decide that that's not your thing, you're not a huge investment into it. I think that's a good. And then when you take out your 16-foot boat on multi-day trips, you bring that inflatable kayak along, you're everybody's favorite person to go boating with, right? Like you can just tag that along, put your friends in it. They're having a great time. They don't have to learn how to kayak. I'm with Aaron. Buy an inflatable kayak.
As a hardshell kayaker, I'm going to be a little cocky and say hardshell kayak because it is rad. It's fun, but it does take a level of physical fitness, and there's a learning curve. The real answer here, you're right. You guys are both right. The inflatable kayak. It's fun. Almost anybody can do it. It's cheap. It's easy to store.
Yeah. You can throw it in. You can take it anywhere. I mean, it opens a world of options of fun little float trips. Oh, I'm going to go here and just float down this, hike in and float down this little stretch.
Yep.
Now, having said all that, I think if you are to look at a small raft or a cat, I think Chris has a good point here. The people who get along the best with kayakers are the R2ers. In a little 10, 12 foot R2 boat, you can pump it up quick. You can, if you're efficient with it, you can actually. Sometimes you have to wait for kayakers. I've seen that.
Come on.
When we did R2, we had to wait for the kayakers. Like, kayakers, you guys ready yet? Because sometimes takes the kayakers a little longer, portages and stuff like that. Yes, Steve, go for it.
Can we clarify something? R1. If I'm rowing a boat by myself, am I R1ing?
No. You're rowing.
You're rowing.
So what does R1 mean?
It's one person in the boat with a paddle.
What the
Raft
R is
one.
just
Versus R2.
What does the R mean?
Raft.
So I'm one person in a boat. So
With
R is so it's P1.
Yeah.
This is like our classification system.
What's the P stand for?
But Steve, it started with R2. It started with R2.
Yeah.
Do you ever have two people rowing a boat? No, an R2 means two people in a paddle boat. So R2ing became big, and then someone's like, "Ooh, I'm R1ing today," and then like that. It's like a subset of the R2 population.
Well, it's also there's also in the racing world. There's R6 and R5 and R4. Like it's always existed as a thing. And there's K1, K2, like 2-person kayak. Like in racing, this is always a thing. C1, K1, R6. There's no oarboat designation though. There's no O2.
Okay.
Yeah. So, anyways, but I think the small raft, like a small 10 to 12 foot raft, as Chris was talking about, have we shown his little comment?
That's a
I think it's a very good option. If you've got a friend, particularly, whoever's asking, if you've got a friend who you like to boat with a lot, or you like to take other people out and have some fun, R2ing is an outstanding option, but you got to have a friend.
But I would also
you can R1, but
you can people are really good at R1ing. You can't, especially back east. There's a lot of people R1ing. They do find it just means like with the 10-foot boat, two people can carry it.
Yep.
And it's not a burden on the group. If it's a 13-foot boat and you're with kayakers, you're going to be a burden. And if it's a 10-foot boat and you're R1ing, you're going to be a little bit of a burden. So I think, or unless you're super buffed out and you can carry it by yourself. But if you want to like go and make a quick day of it, I think R2ing, but then you have to have a friend. And not everybody has friends.
The small raft is a lot more versatile than a cat.
And then the other thing I will say, though, if you have the small raft and you have a little frame for it, sometimes the kayakers will be psyched depending on what you're doing because you're like, hey, I can bring some gear along, a little overnight trip or something like that. Hey, I can bring a little more gear. Then all of a sudden you can get into a little better area with that.
Kayaker is going to say, let me put my stuff in this tiny little raft. And they're so small, they can barely carry
anything. They always ask.
The little raft is way sketchy compared to the kayaks anyway. They don't need any more weight.
I'll just say I think the little raft is
that's an option.
It's a good option as well.
I'd say the 10-foot, yes, the 10, then all the new fancy
or 11.
Or
I've had some 11.
Okay.
10 or 11, 12 starts to get a little bit You can do 2 people with the 12-footer, and I've done 2 people with the 12, but 11 is nice size for R2ing. That's a really
I
nice
mean, a
size.
13 is a good size for R2ing. I love R2ing at 13.
Yeah, but it's the put in takeout part of the
Then
R2.
it's like you got to
To
pump
get
the
better.
whole thing up. It takes forever. You got to deflate the whole thing, and if the put-ins is all challenging, it's hard. All right, hopefully we butchered that question well enough. His part 2 is off topic. It'd be nice if it have a bigger message box here. It's very hard to proofread or edit what you've written if you can only see one line at a time. He's referring
send that to the IT department.
Yeah, he's referring to our questionnaire, and I am the IT department. The software I have, you can. So a couple things. You can make it bigger.
Go in the little corner. Grab there. Yeah.
Pull. Oh, is it work? It's not working though.
Maybe it's no!
Oh,
Zach.
Embarrassing.
But another option. Again, I'm not going to fix this. I'm not going to fix this anytime soon because I am pretty busy. But you could write it somewhere else and cut and paste it. That's another option too. You don't have to sit here. That's how I would do it. I would not write in this box. But this is the best we could do for, content forms are hard to make work as it is. So thank you for being patient with my technical abilities. Okay, moving on. First off, I want to say thank you. I'm a fan of the YouTube show. I appreciate the informative and humorous content. Do you guys hear that? We're informative and humorous.
I think that was meant for Aaron, but okay.
Yeah, I'm informative and Aaron's humorous. I'm wondering if you could recommend any solid Swiftwater courses geared towards field biologists within the Northern California, Oregon region. I'm aware of, they put a name in there. I crossed it out because I didn't want to badmouth them, but have heard conflicting reports on their trainings.
Wow, I really want to know who the XXX is.
I'll tell you later.
Yeah, after the show.
Off camera.
You know who it is. I already know you're You're like so happy because of this. Actually, you'll be smirking when you hear it.
Oh, really? I think I know.
Don't say anything else. Don't say anything else. So a couple things, and you guys may have thoughts. Finding courses designed specifically towards field biologists. I don't know if that exists. I mean, I could make one up. I don't know what field biologists need. Is this in case they accidentally fall in a creek? Are you going rafting? Like, I don't think there's one that exists specifically for field biologists.
Do you think a field biologist would be better off in a Swiftwater course designed for firefighters or a Swiftwater course designed for whitewater enthusiasts?
Whitewater people.
Why is that?
Because I think that the fire department ones are departmental and working as a team and a lot more logistical. I think the whitewater ones are a lot more individually oriented, and a field biologist seems like they'd be more likely to work in a smaller group. People.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking more from the lines of the rafters are used to having rafts and the firefighters aren't used to having, the craft around and everything like that. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I think you're right. I think taking one that's more whitewater oriented makes sense. Now that we have that conversation. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, Zach?
I mean, my quick thought here is if you want something specifically for field biologists and in a very specific geographic region, you're asking a lot. Like, yeah, you can get a Swiftwater course in a certain region, or you can get a Swiftwater course for field biologists, but you might have to go specifically to a very specific course in a geography far away. But to do both is a lot to ask.
And I'm going to say this. I think our frustrations with Swiftwater courses, even the worst Swiftwater course out there, is pretty good when you're talking about like just learning basic safety, getting comfortable with water, playing around the water. As long as you're spending time in the water, swimming around, you're going to get a lot out of it. So I think one I would say I would be looking for one that's going to be taught on the similar type of conditions where you'll be working ideally. So, it's not some huge high volume Swiftwater course on the Grand Canyon or something like that when you're working on little streams and creeks. Like I'd want one that's being taught in similar conditions to where you'll be working. And I think no matter who is teaching it, you're probably going to get good information out of it. Unless, I don't know what your background is or anything like that. So
I think this is where if it's just you by yourself, you could take whatever class you can get. But if it's for you and a team of 6 people, you call a company that offers these things and say, hey, I'd like you to, here's our needs and expectations. Can you create a custom curriculum to fit those needs and expectations?
Yeah, and I think you'd be more likely to find that solution with an individual instructor on
Very
a
good
smaller
point.
scale and doing
Yeah.
a lot of research
Yeah.
in that end. And in that, if you are just a solo person going into a formal Swiftwater class with a bunch of other people, I would still lean towards the smaller, less industrial, less urban, less firefighter type of a training program. Find one that's a little more obscure, and then make those phone calls and tell them what
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
problem
that's
is
a good
trying to
point.
solve.
You don't want the big organizations, because the big
I don't-
organizations are not as adaptable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're going to
you
be
want
on a rigid agenda and a rigid itinerary and prospectus, whatever that's called. And I think you're not going to get as much flexibility as you'd want if you had somebody on a smaller scale.
I'm going to counterpoint that. I'm going to take the other side of that. The bigger organizations have more resources, probably more internal training, maybe a higher level of education, where like really small organizations, they may just be winging it. And so I think that.
But this is going to be more of a winging it course.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree with Steve. I think, Zach, you make a good point, but I just feel like big organizations, you don't know who's going to get sent there. And they're going to be able to choose the right person, like this is what we do. We do this. This is what we train to do. This is what we work on. We refine this. We think this is the best for whitewater rafting. So
yeah. But also, like, the other thing I want to make is, if the field biologists are never going rafting, they're always on shore and they're just afraid of falling in, a firefighter-based course might make more sense, because that's more shore-based rescue. Like that's where, and also where, like, what's that called when you all get in like a fighter pilot formation and cross the river together?
Yeah.
Stuff like that like you maybe sometimes have to go in the water, but you're not really in the water. A whitewater based course, you're actually in the water, hopefully boating, and those are, you may never be boating. Like,
but let's think about this, Zach. I would think that firefighter training is training rescue personnel. The field biologist is self-preservation. Like, what happens if I fall in? How do I keep myself safe in this environment? I don't think they want training on how to rescue other people. And the firefighter training ones, the true Swiftwater rescue technician things, are so oriented towards rescuing other people.
Yeah.
And the whitewater ones tend to be a little bit closer to self-preservation, whatever you want to call it, taking care of yourself, avoidance. But I think a field biologist might want one that's even further towards, like, hey, I just want to know how I can be safe around the river. What happens if I fall in? What happens if I need to cross this stream? How do I take care of myself? How do I take care of my partner that I'm with? Basic throw bag things, but not a big, like, rescue type emphasis. And there are people that can offer that training, I think. But I think if you signed up for a 3-day regular Swiftwater rescue technician thing, maybe 30% of it's going to be pertinent and relevant to what you're going to need to know as a field biologist.
Yeah, it's hard to know what they want. Like, there's not a whole lot of detail in the question. Yeah. But Chris, thanks for jumping in. Great point. You guys want to move on to the next question? Oh, there's a part 2.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. We probably should have read this first. I'm looking to have some flexibility in the training curriculum, waders gear, safety, ring buoy techniques, etc. I have commercial.
What are ring buoy techniques?
River experience. I don't know. I don't know what waders gear safety is either. So, it's something like, if we created that class, we have to research what this stuff is, because I've never heard of waders gear safety. I'm sure the safety is be careful with them. Anyway, but can use a refresher myself before developing a training field for field staff in my workplace. Thank you for advance on leads or suggestions, and I hope you have a busy upcoming season. I mean, take an instructor course.
But what's interesting is waders gear almost. Do they do Swiftwater rescue courses for fishing guides? Because that seems like almost what you'd want if they do Swiftwater for fishing guides. Because they're in their waders, they're walking around the rocks. I don't know if anyone teaches Swiftwater courses that are designed for fishing guides, or that seems like that'd be optimal for what it looks like, the type of work this person's doing.
I mean, I don't know if this exists, what you're looking for.
I mean, fishing guides should be doing it, right?
I guess. Yeah. But we don't know if they are or not.
Yeah.
But I would maybe suggest if your goal is to develop training for your own field staff, like, take an instructor class, and you'll learn a lot. Like, you'll learn everything. And then you can ask, like, a super, the people who teach instructor classes are at a high level. You can ask them very specific things. How do I do ring buoy techniques? How do I do what wader gear safety?
Yeah, then
that
you
might
can
be the way to go.
customize the training.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So
Have
Sean's
you-
saying waders can fill with water and drown you. We've had this debate a lot.
Have we? Because I remember hearing that, and that was something. But then I thought the evidence didn't maybe support that totally. That they just drown you. I mean, they can make it harder to swim.
Wader gear safety is, hey, if you're in waders, be careful. Like, I don't know what else to say than like waders. I've been thinking about waders a lot. I was just teaching a class with somebody who's an angler. For those of you that don't know what that means, it's somebody who fishes. Aaron knows because he's a fishing guide. So anybody else, an angler is somebody who goes fishing. And we were talking about this a lot. I think it's not that it makes you sink. It's just you have all this mass associated with your body, and it's really hard to move all that mass to shore. And you become basically more like a part of the river, so it's hard to escape the river. So I don't think it. I think the common thing people think is the waders make you sink. See, oh, that's cool.
Oh yeah.
There we go. They do it. Chris has a class. I think whoever asks this questions just talk to Chris. We'll he's have to connect, and we'll be good. All right, you guys ready to move on?
Yeah.
Hey, can I do Zach's Gear Corner, sponsored by River Hardware, really fast?
Okay, go.
This is Zach's Gear Corner, sponsored by River Hardware, where you can get some stuff for rafting, but not very much stuff. If you want more stuff, go to somewhere else. Check this out. This is a handheld chainsaw. I just got this today. It's got a little trigger. How cool. Electric. You just walk up to the electric, just hand. It's like a, look at this. Isn't that amazing? Think of all the times you just need to cut something. You cut a 2x4 with it. You can cut a tree branch. Man, the world.
You start carrying those on you in your kayak?
You could. Yeah. I mean, if you were like, hey, there's this one tree we got to cut. This is easy to carry. To cut a little branch
back
out.
holster so you can just pull it out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like hey, burn.
Life jacket mount.
Yeah.
I mean, the modern era is amazing. 2023 is great. Can you believe this exists? I'm very stoked on it. Okay, that's the end of Zach's Gear Corner. Back to the show. Okay, how do I get back to the show? Okay, so Rogue Portage Trails. We were invited on a rogue trip at the end of August with a group of experienced boaters. My husband was a guide for 10 plus years, lots of experience. I'm also a whitewater kayaker, so there's enough sense between us to consider this trip with young children. But my littlest guy is going to be 2 at the end of August, and I don't know much about the stretch. How easily can I walk around the bigger rapids with him in a pack?
Oh, that's a great question.
Are you doing the same thing?
I'm doing the same thing this summer, but my kids are, one's going to be younger and one's going to be older. So, yeah. There's some risk. I mean, I've seen other people. Remember that long time ago, Tom took his oldest daughter when she was really young, didn't he, Steve, on that one trip we did with him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a little stressful, but the trail goes all the way up and down the whole canyon. So,
it doesn't mean you always have access to the trail. I can tell you, like,
no, but
like the trail every time you want to get to the trail.
Rainy, people walk around it anyway. So that's a classic to walk around Rainy. And then Blossom, you walk around Blossom. Those are the 2 main ones, right? I mean,
yep.
And then maybe you want to just scout Upper Black Bar. I mean, it depends on what kind of, like guiding for 10 plus years can mean different things for different people. If you're guiding the Nar for 10 plus years, it shouldn't be too bad. But yeah, I mean, I'm doing it, but I'm not telling everyone else to go do this. So
I'll answer the how easily can I walk around the bigger rapids with him in a pack by saying easier than on almost any other multi-day trip in the West, and easy enough that it's realistic and it's doable and not it shouldn't be a reason to not go. You can do it with a 2-year-old, walk around Rainy and Blossom for sure.
You're not walking around Black Bar. There's a lot of rapids you can't walk. You can get a walk around them if it's just you and you're bushwhacking, but the trail is not at river level the whole time. and so it's not like you can just jump on the trail whenever you want. You a lot of rapids you can't portage. You can't walk around with a kid on your back. If you're to like even like Tyee is going to be tough. Or Wildcat. Wildcat's one I would think about. Wildcat, it's not the trail's not.
Wildcat's one that I would think about too, and
it's not an easy walk.
It's an easy walk. You get on the trail. You get on the trail at Tyee. You don't walk. I mean, you plan for that. You say
you need to know where.
Where do you get off the trail? I think people know there's a trail next to the river, but there's not good. Like a lot of times, it's scrambling up a hill full of poison oak. So it's not just like a jump on the trail.
I agree with Zach. At one point, we were teaching this guide school, and someone on another trip decided to take one of our rafts and rowed across the river. That would be funny. And the person didn't make it across the river and ended up floating the boat downstream like a quarter of a mile, and all our life jackets were on the raft, but we were on the left side of the river. And it was like there was no easy way to hike or get at it. Like you're right, from a lot of places, even getting on the other side of the river, the trail was way up high. We wouldn't get to the trail. It was a mess. You're right. There's a lot of places on the river you can't easily access the trail. So you'd have to plan ahead. Yeah. The other thing I would say, if you're thinking about doing this is my personal thoughts about it, is I'm going to keep my raft light. So it's really maneuverable. I'm not bringing a bunch of stuff. I'm keeping it light and mobile so I can move around easily. So places like Wildcat are less of an issue. And I'm not bringing a ton of stuff, and like, again, I give good life jackets for my kids, and like, yeah, but there's a risk involved. But I mean, there's a risk driving up there. So,
Steve, how old?
Guide for 10 plus years. You don't have to worry about any rapids on the Rogue except for Rainy and Blossom. In my mind, I think you should do it. Not even worry about it. You'll have a great time.
I'm going to take the opposite thing here. 2 is really young, and I've never been a parent. You both are parents, but man, 2.
How young was Tom's kid when they first was the kid even a year old?
I've done it with 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds. Like I've seen it. I've been on trips with kids that we walked around a lot of things.
On the road.
They almost hiked the trail the whole time. They came down and floated different stretches. It's a realistic thing to do.
On the Rogue.
On the Rogue.
How old were Sam and Mac when they did the Rogue?
Sam was 4 when he did his first trip. Mac was 3 when he did his first trip. Mac turned 3 on the Rogue, so it would be a year younger than this.
Did Mac walk a bunch of stuff, or he just floated the whole time?
Walked around Rainy and Blossom. Okay. One of the things I would highly recommend is that both mom and dad, or the 2 parents, are in the boat all the time. Keep the boat light. Be really, really cautious and careful and take all those extra precautions. But I think you can walk around the places where you would be putting them at risk.
So,
which hold on, let's go back. The places you would say at risk, because I think I really feel like walking around a lot of rapids is hard. Like I led a hiking trip there one time, assuming I could reach the trail anywhere and let people hike, and I was shocked at how little access there is to the trail. And I watched these guys have to scale these rock walls to get to the trail sometimes, when I promised them it would be easy. So I underestimated how hard it was to get to the trail. Yeah. The dangerous spots you would say are Blossom and Rainy and maybe Wildcat.
And as Michael's saying here, you can walk around Mule Creek Canyon.
It's a great hike too. It's a great hike.
And that's the thing I was gonna say. If you have the right type of pack too, if you got like one of those little soft hikes, not one of those huge ones that's over your head, the little ones where they sit behind you, you can go almost anywhere with the kid on your back with one of those things, especially if they're like about 2. Like I use that with my daughter, one of the little soft packs, Like I think I have one right around here somewhere. But those little soft packs, yeah, I mean, you're going to be able to bust around pretty well if you're athletic and you get after it with them. So it kind of depends on your comfort zone. Steve, one other question for you. When we're talking about the kids on the river, did you just do regular days and stop for lunch with them, or did you just like head down and do like half overs? Like head down. What did you do about navs? How did you handle all that stuff?
Well, I would say, so this is a long time ago. John Runyon's oldest kid and Ken Brazel's oldest kids. And I was just talking to Curtis and Jen the other night. Michaela went when she was really an infant, and she was remembering hiking around, carrying around. That we made plans. I mean, we knew where the trail was accessible. We knew if we wanted to walk around whatever, Upper Black Bar Falls, we might have to drop them off here, or they might have to walk for 3 miles to miss one rapid. But for the, the benefit of being able to float along for the rest of the trip and spend time at camp was certainly worth it. Yeah, it takes research, and yes, the trail is not immediately accessible, but I do think it's a realistic thing to do. I'm encouraging it.
That scares me too. Just seems young to me.
Well, he's talking about younger. Steve did younger. I'm going to be doing. Louis won't be. He'll be under a year. He'll probably be like 9 months old when we go. But I mean, at a certain age, what's the difference? They can't swim. I mean, like if I put a 4-year-old in the water, it's not any. It's like, ugh. I mean, 5-year-old, is that better? Yeah. It's just like, like we got a vest on. Like I got a vest that I used for my older daughter that floats them really solid. That Stolt Coast one on their backs, crazy stable. It's like, not that I plan to put them in the water, but it's like, well, they go in, the water's warm. I mean,
Aaron, are you rowing the whole time?
I'll probably. My wife wants to work on her rowing some, so she'll row some, but not any place of significance, But yeah, I'll row it, Yeah. I would never say they will be fine, but
I agree with that.
I would never say that.
I'm sure things will work out probably, but like I don't want to be the one that says, "Hey, no. I don't want to be the one that, hey, as you guys should do it and it'll all work out." Like I don't think that's the case. Like something could go wrong.
Clearly, I would do it.
You did.
I have done it.
You have done it.
Yeah. No, and I've seen those trips and they've worked out well. So, and people take their babies backpacking. Like a lot of people think that's a bad idea. It's like, I had a little old lady yelling at me because I took my daughter in the pool when she was under a year old. She said it was too cold, and I was getting yelled at about. I mean,
I think the person asking the question understands this. With this, it's certainly a personal call to take the kids in the wilderness, and we have several trips already. Like, sounds like they're hip, fun, cool parents. They're just looking for information. Yeah.
It's Ask me how mine goes afterwards, because we'll be done in mid-July, and you can ask me, and then we can do a follow-up at that point about how it went. So,
and hopefully, and it is going to take a little bit of pre-planning and discussion about if you do want to walk around a rapid, you might have to make that decision before you get to that rapid.
Mm-hmm.
Deciding. Well, whatever. Like,
I mean, what do you think about this?
Might be accessible a half mile above the rapid rather than immediately above the rapid. Hiking around some of those rapids at river level or scrambling like that, I don't think that's a realistic option. But if you plan ahead, well, you can hike the whole trail if you get down to it.
I mean, let me think about what I would do if I was to be super conservative. I would stop at Grave Creek and just hike all the way down from Grave Creek to Rainy. You can get right below Rainy, and then I'd probably get in right above Tyee. There's access right above Tyee and go all the way down to below Russian.
So how long are these stretches you're talking about hiking? How long is that first stretch? 3/4 of a mile?
No, like 2 or 3 miles. There's a few like 2 or 3 mile sections I would consider doing. Steve, you're like, no, that's not worth it. Just go. Like Grave Creek Falls, no big deal. Tyee's fine.
Yeah. Wildcat would be one that I'd be a little bit nervous at, but if I was in a light boat, 16.
Why would you be nervous to get getting perched on the rock at the bottom?
Yeah. It depends on the water level and all those kinds of things, but I'd be a little nervous there. I will say this: when the first time I did it with the 2 younger kids, we put them in packs and hiked Mule Creek Canyon, and I thought I'd hike for the day, so I went with them rather than go through in the boats because I'd done that before. It was not without concern and without a little bit of stress to hike that trail with a kid in a backpack. Like, you are one stumble away from a bad thing. And there were some places in there that were really scary
What you're
between
saying.
bottom of Mule Creek Canyon and the top of Blossom. There were some slides down where we had to like do some little scree work that was like, if you slipped, you were dead. Like you were going to slide hundreds of feet into a pile of rocks. It was not like stress free. And I was like, man, I'd almost rather have taken them through. And we talked about it afterwards. Might have been even safer to go through Mule Creek Canyon in a raft. I don't know what the condition of that trail is. It changes all the time. Blah, blah, blah. You have to do a little bit of research on that. But walking around Blossom is pretty easy. You can start hiking at Blossom and get picked up, you know,
Paradise.
all the way down at Paradise if you want to. Very, very easily. That's what we did. Where we got back in the boats, we didn't try and scramble back down at the bottom of Blossom, just went all the way to Paradise. That was a really nice day on the trail.
All right, I'm gonna move on. I think that we did a good job with that one. I'm pretty proud of our ability. Oh, I just saw something. There was a runner that died on the trail, running the trail last year. So I mean, that's a good point, Steve. Like the trail could be more dangerous, but there's danger to the trail too.
Yep.
So
It isn't. Yeah.
You know, with the kid on your back. Okay. Topic: large group road camps. I won a permit for the Rogue. Congratulations! May 15th launch. 20 people, 4 nights. What do you think are the best campsites for large groups? May 15th permit. Steve, this is a tough one to answer. First of all, that's the first day of permit season, and the day before there's a bazillion groups. So you're going to catch up with groups. You're going to have camping problems at the end because everybody launches the day before.
But they're doing 4 nights, so they're doing a 5-day trip. So they'll be a little bit.
Yeah, that's
actually might catch up. They're going to catch
So
up with
stall up high.
Yeah, I guess I read that as 4 days, but yeah, that's 4 nights. So it's not. It should be fine. But the lower end could be packed if you speed down there. I probably wouldn't speed down a layover at Rogue River Ranch, for example. That might be a mess. Anyway, what are the best campsites for large groups?
First of all, let's answer the second part of that question. Do you think we will be competing with outfitters for camps that early in May? Let's just clarify that and say, do you think we will be competing with other large groups for camps that early in May and not quite make it?
No, I think they're asking and worried about the speedboaters that the commercial trips run ahead.
Okay.
Private boaters send speedboats too.
And yes, you will be competing with outfitters, but not. I'm guessing there's going to be one other large group launching on May 15th. So I don't think it's going to be stiff competition.
If it was me, I wouldn't worry about it at all. I'm like,
I wouldn't worry about
it.
I'm
not going to get my first choice of camps every night, but I'm going to get an adequately sized camp. It's going to work out. You're going to be fine. I'm more worried about the May 14th people. Like you could catch up with them. That could be a mess.
Yeah.
So
basically the guide is really good with the size of camps. When it says a camp is big, it's a good size camp. And are there really bad campsites on the road? Can you name any campsites that you're like, yes, not do that one? I feel like it's more not which ones are great, which is like avoid these couple ones. Because like they're almost all great campsites.
I don't like Tacoma very much, but that's just a personal. I think most people love Tacoma.
Yeah, I love Tacoma.
But I don't like Tacoma. Yeah. And the other one to avoid would be Big Windy, by all means.
Why's that?
That's the one, that 6-person camp. You have to go up that steep rock face.
Yeah, but I think it might even be identified as a large campsite.
Yeah, that one is not.
Yeah, we shared that one time with some private voters.
I don't think you've ever shared it, Aaron, because
we did. It was a guide school, and we were like, there were 2 people who were like, it got laid, it was a mess.
What?
Like, hey man.
The one where we have to walk up the rock slope that's like 50 degrees.
It was a guide school, so we had guide school students do everything, and we made them dinner, so they were psyched out. We're like, dude, we were just like, because we didn't send a speedboater ahead, and we were getting far. We had to go a long ways that day, and we're late because we're doing all this guide school stuff, so we're late looking for camp to begin with, and finally we're just like, let's just pull over here and camp. Yeah.
So I would my best campsites for large groups. My personal favorites would be Doe on night 1, Horseshoe Bend, somewhere around the ranch or Mule Creek or whatever they call those spots, and then Lower Solitude. So those would be my 4 nights.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you like The ranch?
No, but it just logistically it fits in the best. The location of the ranch. It can't be beat.
Timing wise on the trip. They're on a 4-night trip, so they can. Yeah, I think most private boaters think that Horseshoe Bend and the ranch are the places you have to camp, and because of that, there's the most competition for those places.
Yep.
And the ranch just gets packed. If you let's say, Steve, your ultimate 4-night trip. Personally, where would you camp on a private trip?
How big of a group do I have, and how many other do I can pick
20
any
people.
campsite?
20-person camps, 20-person, like a large group, and May 15th launch. What you'll probably likely get. Like what would you be going for your first option?
I'd be going for Doe. Not my favorite, and I've started on May 15th. I might go to Tyee just because you don't have to worry about it being hot, and there's nice big space there. Second night, the ones on the left,
Kelsey,
one of the Kelsey Creek ones, the lower Kelsey, then right at Mule Creek, like right at the mouth of the creek, that campsite, rather than the two that are upstream of it. But those I'm not camping there for aesthetics. I'm camping there because it just fits in. There's no other place. There's no other really good options in there. And then I really don't like Tacoma. I think it's just too crowded down there. So I would do that Lower Solitude. It's a cool spot. It's a pretty place.
Lower Solitude's my favorite.
Yeah.
And most people don't want to camp there. It's my favorite. I think it's an awesome camp. It's beautiful there.
I'd also think about going down all the way to Clay Hill. That's a cool campsite.
What about Floridel? You don't like camping out there?
Where?
Floridel? No.
No.
No?
No, I think Tacoma and the ranch and Tyee are probably the three that get the most use.
You don't think whiskey's up there?
At first night, you got a few more options.
Whiskey's high. So I would say the first night camps, Whiskey, Doe, Tyee, and Wildcat. I love Wildcat.
I do too, but if you're on a 4-night trip,
you're too far down.
I think you're too far down.
Yeah, and if you get to Wildcat and somebody's there, you're going a long way to the next camp.
Hosed big time. The lower Whiskey, I thought that was one of them. I camped there for the first time this last year and found it to be the most unique of all the Rogue River campsites that I'd camped at. Most of them sort of have the same feel. You're down on the sand and the trees are there, and you're sort of in that little zone between the first set of cliffs and the river. And lower Whiskey sort of goes back up into some pine trees, and it's got like more of an Idaho feel to it. Like it was really cool. It's a really pretty view. It's not an easy carry, but easier than upper Whiskey. I think that I'd almost think about lower Whiskey over Doe, but one of those two.
Lower Whiskey's cool because you can go just sit in the creek too. The creek is right. It's easy access to the creek if you want to cool off. I guess in May you probably won't. And up to the cabin, you can go up to the Whiskey Creek cabin.
Up to the cabin, yeah.
I think after like that, for those first night set of camps, it's like Upper Horseshoe, Lower Horseshoe, Kelsey. Battle Bar is sweet. It's just a big carry. I love Battle Bar. I go to Battle Bar more than I should. Missouri.
Battle Bar, it looks like last year you could do a kitchen down at river level. So you wouldn't have to carry, like some years that whole bottom part is a mess. There was a little bit of a beach and a gravel bar there last year. It looked like you could do a kitchen down low and then camp up above. That's a cool spot.
Yeah. There's just a lot of great camps. And sometimes this is decision where if you're willing to carry stuff up a hill, that opens up a whole lot more camps. Like if you don't want to carry things up a hill, you're somewhat limited. But I think, Aaron, you said it really well. Like they're all really good. Our goal is just to make sure we get a camp that fits our size.
Yeah.
And May 15th, it's not going to be a problem. July, if you were doing a private trip, July 5th, whatever, I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, dude. I mean, it's battle out there. And because there's a lot of groups of 3 taking these 20-person camps, and it just messes up the system for everybody. And then we have to fight over the scraps, and it creates a lot of animosity.
And send speedboats.
Yeah. Where's the?
Right.
There's some.
How are we doing time wise?
We gotta move. We'll move. But this has been a long answer. Tell us where your groover spot is. I'm curious. I have one of mine, but I want to.
Oh, I know that spot.
That big open spot. That big like
cove
wide
is
open.
Up
and
off to the left.
I just want to see if that's what he's saying. Okay. IK in Oregon. Hi guys, really appreciate all that you do. I've been rafting for years now and have recently acquired 2 single-person IKs. I live in Central Oregon and want to know your favorite spots to use duckies. I'm asking because I want to kayak year-round, but don't want to get over my skis in river streams that should only be run hard shells. Where do you like to go with IKs, and what runs are best left to hard shells?
Well, you're the local.
I mean, I don't know. First of all, if you want information about where to go boating, go to whitewaterguidebook.com. Under state, hit Oregon. There's a whole bunch of places. There's a whole bunch of suggestions of where to go boating. Your skill level, your willingness to drive, and flows. But it's all listed out here. Why I put that there? I think there's not runs best left to hard shells. Like in general, if you can hard shell it, you can also ducky it too. I mean, there's nothing just left to hard shells. Now there's hard shells perform better on more difficult runs. But a really good people in duckies can do the same stuff. So this isn't like a hard shell versus IK thing at all. Just start small. I mean, you're in Central Oregon. So there's a section of this website, I think, that says Central Oregon. Let me see if it does. Southern Oregon. Mm-hmm. Oh, there's Central Oregon right there. There's a whole bunch of ideas. And if not, grab one of these books down at the bottom.
The Soggy Sneakers book is really good.
It's a classic. I used it yesterday. It's a great book. It's a great book. Written by an absolute paddling legend. And so there's more descriptions there. All right. Do you guys feel like we adequately answered that question?
Yeah, let's move on. We got to.
All right. We got to move. We have a special guest coming on in some minutes.
13 minutes.
30. No, he's we have an extra 15 minutes, Aaron. He's coming on at 2:15, 3:15. Anyway, I'm interested in the wing cap, but like you, Zach, I think there should be D-rings further out to catch the frame at a better angle. My thought on the outboard side is 4 D-rings between the last D-ring and the valve and angled like the others, about where the eye is in the logo. My 2 questions. 1, should there be 4 similarly placed but lower D-rings on the inboard side, which are lower down on that side? Not sure if those would be necessary. I don't know the answer to this question. Sorry, it's just all words right now. I can't visualize. I don't have the drawings in front of me.
Sounds like you got a good plan, but it'd probably be easier to send a photo with the spots you're thinking about doing it, because it's hard to know.
It depends on your frame. Depends on your frame. If you have the same frame I do, I would like those D-rings out farther, and I'm always happy to add more D-rings. Like if it's up to me, there'd be 10 D-rings on each side. Like why not? So I would just put them 6 inches past the length of your frame, whatever that is.
Have you ever had a boat that had too many D-rings?
No.
I'd say the same thing.
Come on, Aaron.
Zach's he's got way too many D-rings on those rafts.
Steve, Aaron hurts his delicate fingers when he paddles. He has to paddle right next to the raft, and his delicate fingers get hurt.
I've hurt my fingers doing that too, but I've also been frustrated by not having D-rings or not having enough D-rings. The one thing on the catarafts that I noticed was that inboard D-ring, the further away it is from the bottom of your frame, like get a little gap, have that cam strap bridge a little bit, seems helpful rather than have the D-ring be really close to the front bottom of the frames. It seems like you want that. And I don't know, are you starting to, like, that means you're going below the center line of that tube, right? Mm-hmm. Does that matter?
Yeah. This wing cat, I designed it. It's the tubes are great. Wing did the D-rings, and they're good enough. It would be really nice if somebody like got a frame on that thing, which I can do, and like told them exactly where to put the D-rings. It'd be sweet if they had a frame and an expert there that could handle it.
Can I just make sure I understand what you're saying?
Yeah.
Basically, Zach, you designed these rad tubes.
The
And
geometry of the tubes.
and then Wing screwed up and put the D-rings in all the wrong spot.
They're fine. They're just not. They could be better. They're adequate. They could be better.
Zach, is the point of the tube higher than the straight part of the tube? Like, does it go up or is it flat?
It goes up, but not as much as the Sotar one. You've seen this cat, I'm sure, on the rowing schools. It's a little wing cat. It's points up a little bit like it points up a little bit like the Sotar ones do, but not quite. It's less noticeable. It's a sweet boat.
Did you use the golden ratio to determine that? How much it should kick, or how did you do that? The Zach ratio? Is there like a special number you have?
No.
1.63.
There's no magic here. There's no
1.63.
There's no 1.63. There was no magic here. Aaron wants to talk to his friends, so we got to move on. Hopefully, we answer that question well. Okay, training trip leaders. Hey, our company is considering adding a training day for TLs, primarily aimed at newer TLs, 3 to 5 year guides. I'm curious what you would prioritize for this. We will probably have a few hours on the water with time for discussion and a scenario.
Oh yeah, we used to do these.
Yeah.
We did multiple of these. The first question is it a multi-day or single day? Because I think it's a little different for those, but I think there's a lot of similarities. One of our big priorities is just managing. I think the first I put into a couple buckets. The one bucket is managing the group and stuff about that, like managing the guests, that aspect of it. There's the managing the guide aspect of it. And I think the managing the guide aspect of it, there's the like on the water guiding part, and then there's the stuff around camp, put in takeout type of stuff with that type of thing. And so the big parts for me where I feel like we focused most on was the guest part, setting expectations, how to prep them, dealing with those scenarios with them, and then also making sure you're running safely on the river, because that like you only have so much time. And so that's a big part, I think, is boat spacing, how to maintain boat spacing, catching eddies, communicating.
Isn't that more of a guide thing than a trip leader thing?
Yeah, but no, I think it's a trip leader out front. It is a guide thing, but I think like if they're trip leaders on 3 to 5 year guides, I'm guessing they're having their other guides are newer guides, and those are things that need to be repeated, need to be reminded. Hey, because safety should be your priority, right?
But if you only, I guess they only have a day.
Yep.
And so, like, what would you prioritize? Would you prioritize boat order and spacing, or other things more important?
Other things more important than boat order and spacing? What's more important than boat order and spacing, Zach?
There are other things. That's what I'm asking.
Name me something. Name me something more important than that.
No, I'm gonna say that boat order and spacing are important for everybody to be trained on and to be aware of. If you're specifically talking about trip leaders, that shouldn't even be. You shouldn't be training trip leaders on boat order and spacing.
They should have already been covered a long time ago.
Already. That should be something they should be doing.
But I don't
be looking at it from a different perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not training them how to do it, how to manage the group to get the group to do it well. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, okay. Not how to boat space, but more like conversation in the morning, how to follow up with people when they're not doing it right, what to do if you're spread out, like pull over, regroup, have a conversation at lunch, how when to say these things, when to give this feedback, like those types of things. So I think boat spacing, in my mind, when I'm leading trips, is one, particularly a high water like this year, could be in a lot of places. Boat spacing is so important. Zach, it's what you hammer in your class 4 school.
I hammer it. If I have a day with trip leaders, I'm not talking about this. I'm covering that somewhere else. I hammer boat spacing boat order. It's like a major pet peeve of mine. But if I have a day, it's not on my list.
What's on your list then?
I want Steve to go first because Steve probably has the best answer. Steve probably has the best answer.
My first blanket answer would be to train them in preemptive management. Like, address all of these things ahead of time rather than in the moment. Like, anticipate that problem that's coming 2 steps from now and preempt it by saying, hey, when we get here or on our way to put in, I really want to stress boat order today, not when it falls apart. Like I would, preemptive management would be my primary thing. If you did a discussion in a scenario, my guess is that one of the results of that at the end would be when you debriefed, it was like, oh, we should have talked about this before it happened. And all of those things, I would just really stress, try and get them to think about preemptive management of those situations and scenarios. That'd be everything I presented to him. And where this comes from, and Aaron talked about this before, I think one of the best trainings that I did when I was involved with ARDA, and Aaron helped me on this, was to approach each of those situations with a desired outcome. And if you know what your desired outcome is ahead of time, and you express what your desired outcome is ahead of time, you are much more likely to achieve it. And so if good boat order and good spacing is your desired outcome, the sooner you bring that into the picture, like, hey, this is what I want to see happen, the more likely you are to see it. And I think you can apply that to a dozen little scenarios, whether it's how the trailer gets loaded or what lunch looks like or how we interact with guests. I think you can use that preemptive management and desired outcome thoughts to make it really effective.
Yeah.
I'm going to add a few things. Okay.
Before you add to it, I want you add to his idea, but I'm going to say Steve's idea. I think that's what's great about the boat spacing one. I think it's a great example to use to discuss your technique. Because I agree, Steve, that's really important. To is prepping, like you said, that preemptive management and setting, and I'd say along with that, setting expectations. Like what the day is going to be like, what's going to be happening for the guides and for the guests, so they know, hey, this is what's going to happen today. This is what's going to happen. We're going to have a long paddle at the end of the day. So now when they get to the end of the day, you don't tell them about it. And then they're like, why are we paddling for so long? Like, keep people from being upset. So yeah, definitely agree. Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
We'll get to, there's a lot of side questions we may have to get to next week. Those of you asking questions in the comments, you're going to have to go to Whitewater Guidebook and maybe ask them. We're not going to have time to get to a lot of these. I would love to. So first of all, if I did a day is not that much time. I would get rid of the on river. You're going to waste way too much time just to go boating. Kill the on river, and I would kill the scenario. Little benefit for the time. You can't do the scenario.
Then what are you going to do?
That's what I'm going to tell you. I preempt it with what I'm going to kill.
Oh,
I'm going to really focus on the nuts and bolts of like the trip, what the meeting place is, your responsibility when you're meeting guests, any paperwork that has to get done. Like there's a lot of stuff they need to know, like at the meeting place, where are the bathrooms, like the nuts and bolts of meeting the guests. And then I would go into safety talks, and I want to make sure they can give good safety talks, good camp talks, all the talks. I would love to see everybody demonstrate those talks to each other. Like I'd rather do that than a scenario, because I want to make sure that the talks are really well done. And then I would probably move to the end of the trip, like post-trip stuff, like what happens when the trip gets done, any last-minute things that guests need to be told, where gear goes, and then they follow up from the trip. And then I would go on to that's like the nuts and bolts of the trip. And then I would go to emergency stuff. If an emergency happens, do you know where how do you use the stat texter? How do you contact the office? What do you tell them? What does an accident report look like? What does an evacuation look like? All the emergency stuff and how to handle that as a trip leader. And then also, like, there's all kinds of paperwork in the first aid kit and stuff, making them know what you're laughing at me, Steve. So, like, I would, if it's a day,
I'm laughing at myself.
You're laughing at me.
No, I'll tell you what I'm laughing at in just a second.
Okay. There's so much to cover, like logistically, like how to be a good leader. There's just not time for that in a day. It's like, you can't teach somebody how to be a good leader in like an hour. Like you have to find good leaders and train them. And then when they come to TL day, they're learning the nuts and bolts of being a trip leader, not how to be a leader, and not how to do.
I disagree totally, Zach. And I'm going to say this, like everything you just, I'd say a couple of things I agree with in there, but most of the stuff, like really, so they know where the toilet is. Do they not know where the toilet already is? Because don't they
No,
have to use the toilet when they're there?
Because
I mean,
sometimes
that's like what?
they were a guide first. They didn't meet the guests. So like that's an example of something. Like if it's the first, I'm just thinking of Gleese. If you're meeting somebody at Gleese for the first time and you're a trip leader and the guests come and the first thing they ask is, hey, where can I go to the bathroom? And you're like, I don't know. It looks really dumb. Like you want your trip leaders to be ready for that initial meeting and set a good tone and come off really.
And I'm going to say that
knowledgeable to the guests.
I'm going to say this. The first time they do it, I think if you just have someone there with them or they're shadowing someone for the first trip, that can cover most of that the benign stuff, like that you're talking about. Like some of the stuff in there, I think the emergency stuff definitely important. But I think a lot of that just like I would just have them shadow someone, and then maybe depending on how your personnel works, and if the next time they can be the person leading and having someone else there just backing up, great. If not, it gets more challenging. Then maybe I would front load more of that. But I think there's some scenarios are good things to talk about, like within there. It's like I think getting rid of all the scenarios. I disagree. I think you can have
scenarios are great, but you have
and getting them to think as a leader, and getting them to think about setting expectations in front of, and getting them to avoid certain pitfalls.
Aaron, I'm gonna interrupt really quick. In the IRF course, when we do trip leader stuff, it's 2 days of scenarios. That's all we do is scenarios.
No, you're thinking of a different type of scenario, though. You're
thinking of a different type of scenarios.
You're thinking of a totally different type of scenario than I'm thinking of. You're thinking
what's
of
the scenario?
IRF scenario. My scenario would be, okay, we're all sitting in a group, and I agree with you for the trip leader training. I don't think you go in the water. I totally agree with that. Like, I think that's great.
You don't need to go on the water.
You don't need to go in the water. No, nothing on the water. But I would say I would sit down and give like different group scenarios to discuss, or have everyone discuss in small groups. And my scenario would be like, okay, Zach's boat flipped and he dump trucked, and now none of the guests want to get in his boat, and you've got half the river to do. What are you going to do? How do you handle that?
I mean, that's an IRF scenario, though. That's an IRF.
No, because you're just on shore, and how are you going to handle that group? And what are you going to discuss with them? What are you going to say? How do you handle that? Or somebody gets hurt, you're here, somebody gets hurt. How do you handle it? And just to talk through it, and then you can address, okay, what is the first aid step? And you can have the first aid kits there. Okay, let's walk through it and see what we do. And how do we contact? Where's this stuff? And go through that and use a scenario to cover a lot of what you want to discuss.
It's so like, I like the idea of a lot of little scenarios where you break up into groups, talk about it, and come back. He wrote, we'll have a few hours on the water with time for discussion and a scenario. So I pictured like one scenario, and like, that's kind of going to be useless.
Yeah, I think that time on the water. I agree that like, on the water.
I think that like what if this happens? How do we handle it?
If you're going to do one scenario, I think we would all agree you're going to do the emergency evacuation rescue scenario. You've got to cover that. You've got to have that down. You don't get a second chance on that one. That's a critical one. And I think that's something that every trip leader should just be familiar with. The two takeaways that I have gotten from this discussion, I agree with Aaron strongly that having the trip leader shadow someone, or having an experienced trip leader be there in support of someone, is a really, really helpful thing. And then I think Robert is the one who asked these questions. Clearly, you shouldn't be making that agenda by yourself. Like, if I made this agenda, I wouldn't have dealt with paperwork at all. Like, it wouldn't even have been on my list of things to talk about. If Zach's making the agenda, he's not going to talk about some of the more social elements that I might add to it. So find someone else to help you put those two things together. I think is going to be really helpful. But I think the emergency rescue thing is probably number one. If we only could do one thing. Agreed, gentlemen?
Yeah.
More important than the bathroom is.
I mean that for me also, like, if somebody dies, what happens?
Yep.
Like that's a whole training thing too. Like what does that look like? There's a lot there. We've done these classes before. So like when I'm telling you guys, like when I said, I'm just running through my head what we've done before in our classes, what they look like. And I think I would also ask the guides, what are the holes you guys need filled? Like when you're thinking about trip leading, what are the things that you need? Like I would just call them or query them or do Google form and say, hey, what are some things you guys think you need to know? Make sure you cover that, because you don't know what they don't know. And the biggest one is for me is sat texters. I assume they can figure it out, but they want training on the sat texters, on the communication device.
Yep.
It's stressful when you pull that out and you have to use it and you're like, dude, I don't remember how to use this. Even with the one thing I will say about the training with the sat texters and all that stuff, like we do that training like every year or some places, I still don't remember. And we have to pull it out and just like, okay, it better be good instruction. I got to read through the instructions again. And here we go through it because I do it once a year, maybe using it. You know, like, oh, you have to do this to get it to do the satellite. You have to press this button first.
But having training on it once helps you figure out when you have to use it.
Yeah,
like at least having some training helps you. The thing is now, like a lot of guides have their own sat texters now. They're like texting their friends or their mom or whatever when they're on the trip. So like they already know how to. I mean, I just say, hey, can you text this person? You have to pull it out anymore because so many guides have their own.
Yeah,
hey,
that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. All
right, let's move on. We have 9 minutes. Yeah. I think a big thing for me will be helping them feel comfortable working through a scenario that's outside what they have seen before and feel comfortable with, i.e. a complicated rescue, serious injury. There you go. Boat spacing.
Yeah.
All right, we did this one. We're moving on. We did a good job, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, trip leaders. Good morning, Zach. My buddy who does not use the internet asked me to reach out and inquire about the best oar frame setup for a beginner. He has a high side Minimax and has been modified by high side with a 3-thwart setup. Anyways, advice from him would be appreciated. He is going to take a rowing class in Coloma. I can also wait for your response on Tuesday's discourse. Thanks, buddy. Okay, that's this discourse. So what frame for a high side Minimax? I think that's what I'm reading here.
Modified with 3rd-thwart setup.
Hopefully they can take out that middle thwart.
Yeah, I have a Minimax. I actually rode a Minimax all weekend. The Minimax has where the 3rd thwart goes in. There's these holes that can accept a specific frame by this company that we've talked about before that makes the high side frames. Felt there's a Felt frame that is made for these things. Have you guys seen this frame?
Yeah.
No, but is your Minimax that Vern boat?
The Vern boat, yeah. You've seen this frame.
Yeah, okay.
It's this little minimal thing. It's really cool. I would highly recommend that frame. That frame is sweet. And it has to be made maybe specific to the boat. Like he adjusts them a little bit because the boats are all a little bit different. But it's simple. It's light. I just rode it all weekend. It was great. So I'd recommend that. Or an NRS Longhorn. Just a small Longhorn. Hopefully I answered that question. All right, moving on. Hi, Zach. I apologize for the intrusion. I have a question for you. I've been down the middle fork of the salmon 5 or 6 times, mostly when I was quite a bit younger. I'm thinking of the possibility of a late fall trip. How feasible would a drift boat be below 2 feet or so? Aaron, you're the fishing guide.
I run rubber when I'm fishing. I'm not a drift boater.
Yeah.
How much do you like that drift boat? Good luck.
Could you do it? Right? I mean,
Hellfish does it all the time.
Yeah. So it's feasible. But I think that's probably the upper limits, or you got to be a really good drift boater to row the middle fork below 2 feet from the top.
And you're not going to fly a drift boat in. Right.
So that's about as challenging as you could be, I would seem. Like that's hard. Right?
I've never drift boated. I ran an NRS drift boat that was like an inflatable one once. I wouldn't do it. And I know the middle fork really well. I'm pretty good at rowing. Like I would not do it.
I agree. I wouldn't either.
I'm gonna say this.
Be really good, and you'd have to. I'd take a
raft. If Zach gave me one, he said, "I don't care if you dent it up. I would totally take it. But if I were responsible for fixing it afterwards, I would not want to take it."
If you sank it
and
had to go remove it after you sank it,
no. If I didn't have to worry about any of that, if I was just like, then it'd be fine. But if you had to worry about the consequences of screwing it up or sinking it or whatever, no.
I saw one sank in Lower Powerhouse. Somebody sank one, and it was just pinned. Remember that, Steve? I remember a few years ago, like it was just pinned in Lower Powerhouse. Somebody, not only did they sink their drip boat, but they were responsible for having it removed, which is no easy task. Like it's not just losing your boat and ruining your trip. You then have to figure out how to get it out. But yeah, well, Aaron, I thought you as a fishing guide wouldn't know how to really answer that one.
My dad's
Guys.
guy. We'll see. Yeah. All right.
We got through
Yeah.
all of our questions. Do you want to do a couple? Should we bring Tim on, or do you want to do a couple from the comments? Because I told Tim in 5 minutes we start.
Is he here, ready to go?
He's here, ready to go.
Oh, well, yeah. I think that maybe we should save those other ones for next week.
Okay.
If that's cool. Because then, yeah, because I don't want to rush those other questions. So
Let me answer this one really quick. Nobody offers this that I know of. Yeah. Gear Garage. Go to search Gear Garage for boat repair. There's some stuff there, but there's no class.
NRS has some good videos on how to repair boats too.
Yep.
All right.
Should we bring on Tim?
Yeah. Let's
You
talk
get
tents.
Aaron, do you want to introduce him first, or if you should bring him on and let him introduce himself?
I think he introduced himself. Like we've been
All
talking
right.
for a long time. I'm sure other people. So yeah, let's bring him on and then we can start talking to him a little bit and get because I don't know that much about him. So. Hey Tim.
Welcome, Tim.
Hello. Hi, guys. How's it going?
Good, Tim.
Good.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys.
So Tim and I were just having a conversation last week. Like I found an article. I don't know. Did you write that article, Tim, or did Martin write the article? There's an
I
article
wrote that. Yeah.
Yeah, about the silicone tent fabric, and it was like nerding out. And so I sent some emails, and you were really nice to answer my emails. And I was like, man, I got like 50 more questions. I was like, well, maybe we can just talk him into coming on the show and talking about tents a little bit. So it's a little change of pace from what we normally do, but it's kind of needed. So you work for Sling Fin, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And what do you do for them?
Well, we're a 3-person outfit, so
Okay.
we all do a little bit of everything. I do most of the customer-facing stuff, and then as much design as I can do. I do a lot of the materials testing, and I work in sort of a product management role as well. So I test a lot of the equipment, and when we're doing revisions, I'll take a look and see what needs to be changed to make it a little more usable, and make sure our tents are a good fit for the market that we're trying to aim for.
Well, so there's 3 of you. The whole company is 3 people.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then excuse me. And so how long have you been with them from some of the beginning? From when the company started, or
No, not since the beginning. They were around for a few years before I joined. I hopped on about 6 years ago. I showed up at the studio and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, and I demanded a job, and I just kept coming back until I was indispensable. That's how most people.
Zach, you're talking to Zach. That's Zach's thing. You say show up and make yourself indispensable, so they need you. Yeah, that's his.
Yeah.
That's not my thing. That's the thing just in life. There's books about this.
Yeah.
It's not just my thing. Tim, I know a little bit about your tents because Aaron sent me a link. I looked at them. They're really cool. They're really expensive.
They are. Yeah.
So I'm assuming, and hey, Aaron is the cheapest person I know. But Aaron also knows I will spend good money for good gear. Like, hey, if it's more expensive, I'm like, there's a good reason for that. It's probably better. What's better about these tents?
You gotta hope. Yeah. So pricing for tents, it really boils down to you're paying for materials and you're paying for labor. So if a tent's more expensive, it's going to reflect an increased cost of one of those 2 things or both of those 2 things. So for us, the materials we use are significantly more expensive than what is generally being used in these tent categories. And then we also work with a contract manufacturer to do our production, and they're the best tent factory in the world. They've worked with a lot of high-end brands, and they certainly charge a premium for their work, especially over the last couple of years. But the quality of the craftsmanship is, in our opinion, definitely worth it. Especially when we're the ones who have to deal with warranty. You know, we want our tents to be as well made as possible.
So Jim, just to let you know, Zach actually manufactured tarps for a while. So he's kind of, oh yeah.
Oh,
so
you got to
be careful what you say.
Hold on. I
Yeah.
still do. I actually went down to they're sewn here in Hood River. They're made. I mean, Hood River's people that sew here are paid really well,
Right.
and they used to cost. I know this because they're made of nylon 420,
Okay.
pretty
Oh, that's nice fabric.
basic, durable fabric. It's like a good, it's a combination of waterproof-ish enough and durable and not super bulky.
Right.
They used to cost $500 when I made the last batch,
Mhm.
like 8 years ago. They're now 800.
Right.
It's just
Right.
I'm having 10 of them made because
Right.
people want to buy them, but it's
Right.
crazy expensive. Part because the material's gone up, but also paying somebody a good wage in the U.S. is
Right.
expensive.
Very expensive. Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to find experienced sewers in the U.S. You know, I don't know if they're realistically for the scale that we would want to manufacture at. I don't think we would be able to find a production facility that could produce tents at scale in the U.S. at the same quality that we're producing at. Because, you know, our designs, a lot of our tents are geodesics, and they're really, the patterning is really intricate. So these take a really long time to sew. But we also have noticed a lot of increases in materials costs. Yeah, I think both of those factors have compounded recently.
So don't you guys make a tent, a tarp too, or something like that, Tim? Don't you guys make a big tarp or something like that? I thought you guys saw something.
We're working on a flat tarp. Martin, our founder, has a bunch of river tarps that he's made kind of on his own. He's a big rafter, yeah, we've got a flat tarp that's more for backpacking purposes because it's much lighter, very compressible. Oh, another thing actually about
Is that this one?
fabrics and materials. Yeah, so this one is specifically a backpacking shelter, or, you know, bike packing. It's a shape tarp. We're also working on, it's not on the website yet, but we're working on a flat tarp that's essentially just a rectangular tarp that is a little more versatile in terms of the pitch configuration. One thing to note, actually, and this is kind of relevant for a lot of boating applications, is that materials cost, you're paying, the price to weave a fabric is highly dependent on how long it takes to weave the fabric, which is why heavy materials are cheaper. So when a lot of the fabrics that we work with, like this fabric here,
That's some weird back. What's that background noise?
Sounds like there's an airplane.
There's an airplane somewhere.
Oh, Steve just is weird. Oh, it's Steve.
Yeah. So this is the same fabric that we use on the tarp on the screen there. This is a 10 denier silicone coated nylon. And the individual fibers in this fabric are very, very thin. So
show that again. Can you show that again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So this is a really, really lightweight fabric. A denier, basically, there's a very specific definition for it, but essentially it's the thickness, the weight of the individual fibers used to weave a fabric. So when you're weaving a fabric out of fibers that are very light and very thin, to make a yard of that fabric, it's going to take twice as long as it does to make a fabric with fibers that are twice as thick. So with boating, weight is not as critical of a factor as it is with, you know, say ultralight backpacking. So boaters are lucky in that they can opt for heavier materials, and, you know, paying for a more expensive tent when you're boating isn't always necessarily the best thing to do, because you're really, you know, you're paying for an expensive tent. A lot of what you're paying for is a lightweight tent. And if you don't need the lightweight, then you can get something that's going to be just as functional for a lower price.
Now, what about the durability? Like on those, like the thinner ones, it seems like it'd be less durable. Is that the case?
Generally, yes, but it's not. The weight and durability are not directly correlated. Generally speaking, when you pay a lot for premium lightweight fabrics, you know, however you slice it, a super ultralight fabric is not going to be as durable as a really heavy, bulky fabric, but you can minimize those diminishing returns by using more premium fabrics. So, you know, our 10 denier fabric is going to have a lower tear strength than a cheap 70 denier fabric, but it's not going to be, you know, if it's 3 times as light, it's not necessarily going to be 3 times as weak. But the thing, heavier, older, like heavy duty, bulky materials, generally speaking, they're going to be more durable.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
These tents are more expensive than tents. I look at the price, I'm like, yeah, that's more than a tent. What I'm hearing from you is, yeah, the material is really awesome material.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it awesome? Like, what makes this material? Why would I want this really expensive material versus something else?
So, well, this is a whole can of worms here.
That's what I want to know. I'm like,
yeah.
that's what I'm dying to know. Like,
Yeah.
I like I said, I can appreciate the fact that they're expensive. I love well manufactured, well thought out design stuff. I'll pay a premium. Why am I going to pay a premium for this?
So, for instance, this 10 denier fabric here, this is like a miracle fabric. We love this stuff. It's the main thing is that it's a silicone coated fabric. So most tent manufacturers will use fabrics that are coated with polyurethane. Sometimes they'll do a silicone polyurethane, so silicone on one side, polyurethane on the
These
other.
are a lot of words I don't understand.
Okay.
I don't know what urethane is and polyurethane. Like, I think Aaron does because he's, Aaron.
I read his article on it. Yeah, I'm excited.
That,
we're getting into the article more. Now,
and honestly, I don't really care what it's called. Like, why is it better?
No, but hold on.
Okay, we'll go into
silicone, but it says polyurethane. Let's talk a little bit about that. Is silicone less toxic?
Silicone is less toxic. It doesn't contain fire retardants, which are carcinogenic. The thing about silicone, so silicone is a very common material used a lot in, well, it's everywhere. There's your kitchen spatula. Yeah, it's very inert, so it's non-reactive, and it also doesn't absorb any water. So it's extremely hydrophobic, and which means it repels water, and because it's inert, that means it doesn't react with other chemicals or water or
But fire does.
Yeah, so polyurethane does. So if you've had an old tent that has been up in the garage for a long time, 10 years, you take it down, you open it up, kind of smells like puke, or like old raisins, or so that's
it's kind of sticky. Yeah, it's all kind of
sticky, it loses its waterproofness. That's because it's a polyurethane coated fabric, and polyurethane reacts with moisture in the air over time, and it breaks down. It's a process called hydrolysis. So you're going to get this fabric with the coating starts flaking off, and there's no way to stop that once it's started. Basically, you can try to recoat the fabric with something, but once your fabric is getting sticky and stinky, then it's time for a new tent. So essentially, polyurethane coated fabrics have a shelf life. You can minimize the hydrolysis by making sure it's really dry, storing it somewhere cool, making sure it's somewhere dark. But ultimately, that tent is going to fall apart. Silicone, because it's so non-reactive, which is why it's used in cooking utensils and all that kind of, and biomedical applications, it's not going to have that same reaction. So unless that makes you the limiting factor in your tent's lifespan. So if you treat that tent well, it's going to last indefinitely. You don't have this ticking clock of when this material is going to degrade. But another advantage to silicone over polyurethane is that because it's so hydrophobic, polyurethane actually, ironically, most of the formulations of polyurethane do absorb water, even though they're used to waterproof fabrics. So they'll absorb water over time and hang on to that water. They take a really long time to dry out. And because of that, they're really susceptible to growing mold and mildew because you've got this water in contact with the fabric for a long time. So silicone also, your tents are much less likely, not that you should store your tent wet ever.
Yeah, can I? I can just throw it away in the garage wet and it's fine. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so you're going to have a bigger margin of error there, but I still wouldn't do it because obviously not all of the fabrics are waterproof. You've got the mesh, you've got uncoated nylons that are breathable for the interior of the tent. So you're going to have a wider margin of error, especially if you're on a trip where it's really wet and you're packing up your tent wet every day. Obviously, it's not feasible to dry it out every time you're packing it up because it's raining sometimes. So you're going to have a much larger margin of error for dealing with moisture.
Are you guys the only ones doing this? Sorry.
There are a couple other companies. Hilleberg, for instance, they use two-side silicone coated fabrics. A lot of the cottage manufacturers around are using silicone coated fabrics. I know Mountain Laurel Designs is using them on their pyramids and some of their tarps. Generally speaking, it's
Tim,
not as common.
Is silicone more expensive than the polyurethane?
Yes, it is.
Significantly more?
20 to 30%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whenever I see the silicone coating tents, it's always as a ultralight option. So I always thought that it was a weight saving thing, but it doesn't sound like that's its sole advantage.
Correct.
I don't think I've ever seen like one of Zach's big tarps, heavy material coated with silicone.
Right.
If silicone's a better coating, why don't they coat heavier duty fabrics with it?
My guess is that cost is a big factor there.
Okay.
We've experimented a little bit with silicone coated heavier fabrics, and so we use up to 70 denier silicone coated fabrics, and we've had a lot of good luck with those. As to why there aren't readily available heavy silicone coated fabrics out there, I'm really not sure. I think a lot of it's probably a cost saving thing, because when you get into those really heavy fabrics, you're probably using a lot more material, and then the differences in price become more significant.
Can you give us a little primer on denier?
Oh, they can't make them what?
You can't make them waterproof.
Oh.
That's why they're on heavier fabrics.
Oh, Martin just chimed in and said that also it's hard to make heavy fabrics waterproof with silicone. Why is that?
They can't add enough of the material when they're coating it. They can't put enough.
There's
a limit to how much waterproofing you can make with silicone.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So do you guys get that?
Yeah.
Sorry about
Martin, but Martin.
Oh,
Tell him he's talking to 3 UC Davis.
Yeah, we're 3 UC Davis grads right here.
Oh, they're all from UC Davis.
No kidding.
Yeah. Hi, Martin. Yeah. Aaron, Steve, and Zach. Yeah.
Class of 1980.
Okay.
Class of 1980. You guys are on my headphones, so he can't hear you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I
can translate.
Were you there at the same time Martin was there? Did you guys overlap, Steve?
I think so, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to the silicone stuff. So you were saying you can't make it quite as thick, it sounds like Martin was saying.
Right.
But then, so when like Black Diamond was making that Mega Mid Pro, was that all silicone?
It used to be. It used to be a two-side silicone coated 30 denier nylon.
Okay. And then,
what is it now?
That's actually how I found your site, because I was like, what happened to the silicone one? I wanted the silicone one. And I started looking around trying to find the silicone, because I wanted to buy one. And I was like, I don't want this other one. And I was like, and then I found your site and read your article, and I was like, oh, cool, these guys use silicone. But then I was like, hey, are you guys thinking about making a mid? Because I wanted a silicone mid, because it seems to be optimal for that. Like,
I think now it's I forget exactly what they switched to. It's a polyester now.
Yeah, it's
like a 20 or 30 denier. I don't know what the coating is. I don't think it's silicone.
No,
I think it's.
And they got the seams are sealed on it now too, with the seam tape.
With the tape, yeah. So that's an advantage to then it's not silicone, because the main disadvantage in my opinion as a designer to silicone is that the seams cannot be factory taped. So, you get a lot of tents, you'll see the little strips of transparent tape along all the seams. that's because it's a heat activated adhesive, and they can apply it at the factory with a machine that looks like a sewing machine. Silicone is famously nonstick, so there are very few things that can adhere to silicone besides silicone. So the reason that we have these tents set up in our studio here is because we're sealing the seams as opposed to taping. So that's where we mix up.
You hand seal every tent you sell?
We do indeed, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Well, all of the lightweight ones. With the heavy ones, the seams do better when they're not sealed than the lightweight fabrics. So the fabrics that we use above 20 denier, we've done a bunch of testing and they don't need to be sealed. So
Really?
Because the silicone is absorbs less water than the polyurethane, it tends to wick water through the seams less than polyurethane coatings. So it doesn't seem to need any sealing.
Because that's one of the annoying things. I feel like the seam tape always one of the first things to go on my
That's true.
products, and that's why I was like, I saw this, like, I don't want seam tape because the seam tape is going to come off, and then
seam
And then
tape
you have to
is
seam seal it.
first things to go.
Yeah, but then I feel like the seam sealing, I feel like where the seam tape used to be doesn't seem to work as well. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but maybe I'm just not good at it. Okay.
I have a black diamond tent that I got. It's just a one person, no fly. It's just one layer tent.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it. I had to seam seal it myself, which was frustrating because the last thing I want to do on a Saturday is seam seal a tent. Is that a silicone tent? Is that why? Is because it's a silicone tent? Or could it be some other reason?
Are you talking about the First Light?
I think so, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that little single wall. No, that one is some weird proprietary, not really waterproof, but kind of breathable fabric. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. My guess is that it's
some other I'm looking at it's the First Light.
Yeah.
It's actually been amazingly waterproof for the times. I mean, I'm surprised how waterproof it is for being one layer.
Yeah.
But seam sealing sucks. It is really not fun to do.
Yeah, it's
So
kind of a pain.
there's three of you that work there. I'm guessing like you guys are all like executives. There's like you're probably the CEO, the CTO, and this like you're three of you. The tents are made in another country.
Right.
They get shipped to you guys, and the three of you, in between being really important, doing important C-level sweet stuff, you're also seam sealing these tents by hand.
Yeah, it keeps things interesting.
Yeah. So like you're like, hey, guys, I'm gonna take a break from steam sealing tents so I can talk to Aaron.
Yeah.
No wonder he's so excited to talk to us. He's like, I got really to do this. This is important.
Want to keep talking?
Yeah.
What's the status on single wall tents these days?
Personally, I'm not much of a fan. I mean, they have their place for their intended use case, and this is going to sound like a total, industry cop out. I think for what they're made to do, they work really well. I think generally speaking, people want them to work well for things that they're not designed to do, and that can be a very frustrating experience for a lot of people. So
give an example of what they don't do well.
Or what they do well, yeah.
What they do well.
Yeah. So what they're designed, I'll start with what they're designed to do.
Yeah.
They're designed to be used in very cold, very dry conditions. Generally speaking, single wall tents are meant to be lightweight mountaineering tents, like the First Light, for instance. That tent is designed to be dug into the side of a snowfield on a 40-degree slope on the side of a mountain. You get in there, you sleep for 4 hours, you get up, you break it down, and you go up to the summit. Like that's what they're for. When you get into places with a bunch of rainfall, with humidity, that's kind of where they stop working as well.
So I used mine on a trip that it rained every day, and it wasn't awesome, but it was fine.
Right.
What I love about single wall tents is they're super easy to set up. As a guide, I get to camp. I don't have time to like do all the poles and then put the fly over and stick the fly in.
Right.
I just want a place I can crawl in and fall asleep. I don't need like a 15-minute project taking it. This is like goes up in like 2 minutes, comes down in a minute. That's
Yeah,
what I
as
love
long-
about the single wall tent.
Yeah, well, one of the issues personally that I have with the First Light is that it's an internal pole tent. I don't know if you've ever tried to set that thing up in high winds. It is a pain.
I've only used it on river trips, so I've never set up in high winds.
Yeah.
I like that it's internal pole because as I just throw the poles inside, it's super easy. I don't have to do any clips.
Right.
Like I can get that tent up really fast, but
Yeah,
it works for
it's-
me.
Yeah, I mean, most double wall tents too these days are not 15-minute projects to set up. It's I can get one of our tents up in 2 minutes with the fly. It's they're as long as you're working with a relatively simple design,
Yeah.
the setup times are really
Which
not all
of your
that different.
which of your tents is that tent? I'm looking at your website. Which tent is a simple design to set up?
The hot box, for instance, that's kind of our
You say the
closest
hot
competitor.
box?
Hot box, yeah. That's our closest competitor to the First Light.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Aaron.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what you're. I don't know what you're
Wait,
referring to.
wait, these are silicone, so you shouldn't be doing that inside. That'd be very dangerous, right?
Aaron, I don't
It's
even know what
very
you're talking
dangerous.
about. What's that thing on the side?
It seems like a bad name for yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
What's that for?
That's a storage port. So if you go down to the photo directly below this, that's the inside view. So this tent is specifically designed as kind of an alpine bivy tent, and one of the criteria we had designing this tent is that there were no points that were necessary to stake out, because a lot of mountaineers, they want their tent to have as narrow of a footprint as possible, which means no big vestibules coming off the tent. One of the downsides of most single wall tents is that they have no.
Oh yeah.
With this one, we didn't want to make a traditional large vestibule because that would compromise the usability of the tent for alpinism. Also, a lot of these bivy sites are just small rock ledges where you can't get any stakes in. So we put a couple of snow flaps on the side of the tent that can be toggled into the sides of the tent to store your packs on top of. So those drawstring vents on the sides, you can open those up. You can shove your pack in between the tent body and the fly, because it's a double wall tent, on top of the snow flaps. And that gives you a spot to get your gear out of the tent while you're still in the tent.
Those flaps right there.
Exactly. So you can stake them out like they're shown in that photo, or you can attach them directly to the tent body, throw your gear on top of them, and then, it's not as good as a normal vestibule, but it gives you some storage space without the need to use any extra stakes or increase the pitched area of your tent.
Okay. I have another question. Can I ask questions? Steve, Aaron, am I jumping in too much here? Do you guys want to ask questions?
You want to ask questions about the hot box? Because I'm going to go someplace else.
I'll go someplace else too. I'm going to go someplace else.
Yeah. So I want to ask a couple questions about re-waterproofing tents and that whole scene. Where you put that stuff on to recoat them with the waterproofing. Do you need to do that to silicone tents then? Do you re-waterproof them? If it doesn't,
We've never had to.
It doesn't sound like you need to do all those shenanigans.
Yeah, I've personally never. None of our tents have come back. None of our silicone coated fabrics have ever needed to be recoated.
Like with my regular tents, I've tried to do that. Put the new coating on and spray it on, wet it down, and that whole thing. Okay.
Yeah. That's not something we've ever really had to deal with, and I'm confident it's because of the silicone coatings.
Okay.
I think one thing that we have, so many years ago, a couple of our tents had some polyurethane coatings on them, and we've noticed that like some of those floors have needed to be re-waterproofed. And what we've been having people do is just make a dilute silicone solution and just paint that on. So the silicone can adhere to the polyurethane. And can impregnate that fabric and
Oh, really?
restore a lot of the waterproofness.
So
if
my
you've
my
got, like,
ancient Mega Mid, I could give it some more life by painting it with silicone.
yeah.
Oh, you're gonna save me. See, Zach, it was worth it. He's saving me a bunch of money. I don't have to buy a new
So now
one
you're not
now.
going to buy one of our tents, huh?
Well, if you make a Mega Mid, it's a silicone one. I might. I don't know. I'm pretty, like Zach said, I'm pretty cheap.
It's pretty
Like,
cheap,
much,
man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bought my Mega Mid
Yeah.
used off some kid who'd beaten it to death.
Yeah.
You know,
If he didn't
and-
find his tent in a trash can, he's probably not gonna. He's probably just gonna borrow somebody else's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Borrow,
But-
he'll
oh,
borrow
yeah.
He's slept in a lot of Arctic tents, I bet, over his days.
No, never.
A
actually,
silicone
never used
megamid would be, if you're looking for another tent to design, that's the way to break into the guide market.
We're working on it, actually.
I mean,
Good.
here's my. This goes to my
So-
question.
Yeah.
Can I ask my question? Because I think we're on there. I feel like when I buy tents,
Mhm.
I bought a lot of tents over the years, personal tents, and also for
Right.
the company I run. They're always designed for alpinists. Whether we buy Mount Hardware, Big Agnes makes some stuff for ultralighters and whatever, but like we're always buying tents designed for alpinists.
Right.
And nobody's ever said, "Hey, what do river guides need?" Or what are river, not even guides, but like, what do people who go rafting need? Like, what does that tent look like? And if that
Yeah.
tent existed, a lot of people would be like, "Yeah, that's exactly what we want." We're just adapting alpine tents to the
Right.
river environment.
Right. Well, funny you should mention that. We do have a tent that we yeah, oh, there you go.
So I just looked at your website and I'm like, what tent would what would I want? Like if I could, what could I make work for what I'm doing? And I guess this was the one.
This would be the one. Yeah. So
Really?
yeah, so for river guides or for river trips in general, the special considerations that you guys have are essentially, one, weight is not as important, so you can use more durable materials. Two, you've got a lot of dust, so
And sand,
and grit and silt in the river. So you're going to get grit and sand and dust in everything, and that kills zippers. So I'm sure. I mean, one of the reasons mids are probably so popular is that, you know, you've got one big zipper. It doesn't go around any curves. You know, that's it's going to fail less quickly. So if you want a tent for rivers, number one, I would say big old zippers.
Yeah.
Number two, you want a solid canopy, because when you get wind that blows all that dust and sand and stuff under the fly, you want it to hit the canopy and bounce off. You don't want it to go if you've got a mesh tent, it's all going to go, or if you're using a mid and you don't have any kind of skirt or anything, it's going to get over all your stuff. It's going to get in your sleeping bag. It's going to get all over the place. So the Indus, we adapted from one of our other designs and focused it towards the needs of, you know, river guides and general outfitters and programs. So we took our crossbow tent, simplified the design a little bit, made all the fabrics much heavier, much more durable, which is also why it's less expensive than the crossbow. And we added huge zippers and a double door. So to us, our thought is that this meets all the main criteria of a tent for the river in terms of durability.
Double door means a door on each side, or one side just a big door?
Oh, so both doors. Let's see. If you go down to the picture that's two below, yeah, one of those. So there's a full mesh door there.
Uh-huh.
So you've got a hot, still night on the river. We wanted to give you some ventilation. I did. I rode the Maine salmon last summer, and we had nights in like the 70s, 80s. It was hot, and those nights were also a lot less windy than the cooler nights. So we wanted to have the ability to ventilate the tent when it's hot, while, you know, keeping the ability to completely lock it down when you're getting a sandstorm.
So
Yeah.
I think about this stuff a lot. I have a lot of complex thoughts here,
Mhm.
and so I'm going to share some of them.
Yeah.
One of them is like as a guide.
Mhm.
I think this is a tent I would like, or a private boater.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, this fills all this, just checks off the boxes.
Mhm.
As long as I think having it set up quickly is important, which it sounds like it does.
Mhm.
Another thing is like having the floor be really like super bomber material.
Yeah.
Because we do end up putting rocks in our tents more than we should. It's a thing, like
Right.
instead of stake, like, and like for me, I don't want to stake it down, like
Mhm.
because I don't know. It's just one more thing to do, and a lot of times the ground doesn't accept stakes that well. So I'll just throw a rock in there, and so having the floor be really thick. I'm not sure how thick the floor is, but like that's a big deal.
Yeah.
This would be like a high end, awesome tent for probably one person. It says it's in this two, but is it really gonna? Does it barely fit two people?
By backpacking standards, this is generous for a 2-person tent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're
So-
not going to be able to spread out with 2 people, but you're not going to be spooning all night.
Okay. So two. So it's a 1-person tent, but could
That's-
handle
that's-
2 people pretty comfortably.
Have you ever used what am I going, like what are those big pads that everyone likes to use?
Pocket
You
pack.
and- you and- what? Like the Paco pads. Could you fit 2 Paco pads inside that next to each other?
It depends on they make pocket pads in different widths.
Yeah.
So this
But like-
is a 50-inch wide tent. So you can fit 2.
25.
The standard for an extra wide sleeping pad is 25 inches, so you could fit 2 of those
Okay.
next to each other.
But Aaron, the smart people put their pocket pads under their tent.
Underneath. I know, I agree.
I do, yeah.
But I was trying to get width on it. And I agree.
You don't do that, Steve?
I don't have a
Look,
pocket
we
pad.
use Paco pads.
We could do a whole show on pocket pads, and I would dominate.
No, Zach agrees with you on all of it.
I
think
don't.
we're all Paco pad haters here, pretty much. I
I'm
don't
not
know
a
about
pocket
Really?
pad hater. I'm not a pocket pad hater. I'm not a lover either. I'm in between. But if there is an extra pocket pad available,
you. Mhm.
I'll grab it and throw up my tent on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's durable. It's easy. It's less
Or you're
work.
just to protect your thermarest.
No, to protect the
tent.
floor. Protect the tent. Like it's actually to protect the floor. I have a lot of holes, Tim. I have a lot of holes in the floor of my tents. So
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think as a guide or like a private boater, this is a cool high end tent. I think for commercial guests, I could never buy this for commercial guests. It's
Why is
so
that?
expensive. Well, it's
Oh.
expensive, and I want to have an even bigger tent. Like I'd want to have a bigger tent, and I wouldn't want there to be I would want to stake in the vestibule. The tents that we use, it just goes out, and the vestibule, there's no vestibule that goes down.
Okay.
Because like the staking, if our guests are setting up the tent, they're going to struggle with the vestibule. I've watched a million guests try to stake a vestibule and they can't figure it out. And it's a mess and it flaps in the wind.
Mhm.
And if guides are setting them up, to set the tent and do a bazillion stakes, it's just not going to work.
I like this. That's funny. I prefer the tents with the vestibules on them.
Oh,
As
so do I.
a guide?
Oh, yeah,
for the guests.
absolutely.
Yeah. Like the ones we had at Arta. What was that? What was that company?
Sierra
name?
Designs ones?
No. Steve, who was the company that was making those tents?
Alps Mountaineering ones?
The Alps Mountaineering.
The
ones,
Taurus?
Yeah, just like it just
Yeah,
not
with
like
the full
how
vestibule. I like those
the
better too.
full vestibule on both sides. People can put their stuff underneath there. They have space inside for themselves.
And
Otherwise,
if it rains, the stake comes undone and there's just like they're sloppy on the outside. Half the guests don't even set them up.
Maybe, but usually I just go around and make sure everyone was set up fine. And then
Yeah, of course you did. Of course, I'm sure that's what you did.
It's good guiding.
Walked
Yeah,
around.
Maybe be a better guide, Zach. You wouldn't have
Maybe
sure
we should
you
let our
did.
tent expert weigh in a
Yeah.
little bit here. Tim, you've been really diplomatic. It's been really fun to listen to you. I have just go ahead and bash whatever that polyethylene, polypropylene, whatever. What was it? Urethane.
Oh, polyurethane.
Is there any reason that I should ever buy a polyurethane tent again? Silicone seems like it's just way better.
I can't think of a good reason. I mean, if 20 minutes of seam sealing is enough of a disincentive to sacrifice a lifetime of a more functional product, then that's a trade-off that I can't choose for you. But generally speaking,
It seems like silicone's a way better material to use. And if you could just say, I'm never gonna have to smell that smell again,
Oh God,
that's
yeah.
enough.
Never
Me,
again.
Because that's you pull your tent, you haven't used it for a couple of years, like, oh, I got to get out the big tent or whatever, and then you take it, you're like, man, oh,
It peels
nuts.
apart.
Yeah,
and then
yeah, it's all, and you're trying to
Yeah.
sleep in it, and you're like, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one off-label way to get around that. So this is certainly going to void your warranty. But if it's the difference between not using that PU coated tent ever again and getting a couple more years out of it,
Yeah.
if you throw that in the washing machine, which you should never do with a good tent that still works, but
Okay.
if this thing is falling apart, put that in the washing machine, wash it really good, get all of that coating off, get all of that flaky coating off. I'd say put it in the heavy cycle.
Okay.
Then get it down to the uncoated fabric. Then you might be able to paint in that silicone.
How would I buy that silicone?
So what we use for silicone for seam sealing, it's just household silicone caulk from GE. It's 100% clear silicone caulk.
Hardware store.
Yeah, and it's got to be the clear stuff. I guess
Okay.
you could use colored if you want, and then we mix it in with odorless mineral spirits, which it's actually suspension, so you just have to really stir the crap out of it, and then you get it homogenized, and that's what we paint on the seams. And then the mineral spirits evaporates, and it just leaves the silicone. So we use a thicker combination of that for seam sealing. But if you were going to waterproof a fly sheet with it, I would dilute it a little bit more, so you have like a kind of a little bit less viscous than heavy cream, like maybe whole milk consistency. And you could probably, I wouldn't say it'd be great in any kind of sustained downpour. It might, but it'll definitely be more pleasant to occupy than a hydrolyzing stinky PU coated fly sheet.
Okay.
Are the mineral spirits like those bad to breathe in?
Not really. We ventilate it. It's not going to be. It's not as bad as toluene. It's not as bad as any of those other chemicals, and it's a pretty common household solvent. I wouldn't do it in a small room with all your windows closed.
Do you mask up when you use the mineral spirits?
No, we just open the door and turn the fan on.
Huh. Yeah, I've done enough toluene. Don't want any more.
Yeah.
All right. I got a couple more questions. Tim, where are you right now?
I'm in our studio in Berkeley.
Berkeley.
Yeah.
Right on. And the name Slingfin. Story there?
Martin tells it better than I do. But Martin, do you want to tell the story? Oh, is Martin out? Martin's not here. Basically, he wanted. It was a combination of. Oh yeah, you want to tell the story of the name Slingfin?
Googling tents right now. Tents are expensive.
Hi.
All right.
We were asked that so often at trade shows. For a while, we said it was a medieval weapon, but the reality was, I was domain mining a while back, and I was looking at climbing slings and fins, and I ended up putting the two together because it was something we, like a climbing sling and a fin of a fish, so we could do things in the mountains, and we can also do things in water. So the idea was to have a name that covered sort of everything on Earth, that let us, not just be, dedicated to things on land, because I like boating a lot. I like water a lot. And so that's where the name, it was really, and I bought it like, I think 2 or 3 years ago before we used it. The original name of the company was Expedition Technology until we got the trademarks for Slingfin, and then we switched it over.
Oh, cool.
But I think Expedition Technology still is up with the logo.
What in the Slingfin sphere in your world? What's the furthest thing from tents that you're working on? Like, what are you dreaming up? Like, what's
I didn't hear the beginning of the question. Sorry.
in the Slingfin world? Is there anything way outside of tents, like some Martin's Midas invention that you're? I mean, that's sort of your reputation from UC Davis days. Was you were a trendsetter out in front. What do you work? Can you tell us, or is it secret?
No. We have some new, like usual, we have new materials. I mean, what made Patagonia was fleece, right? They found a
Okay.
bankrupt a wool, company that made a wool and turned it around. So, we're looking as always with some new materials and working with new materials, and we found some really interesting materials. So we work with the suppliers there. So that's one thing, is just materials. I'm working on a different way to pitch tents. So we're working on things like that. As far as outside of the brand, outside of what we're currently doing, you're better off doing what you know what to do well. And once we get large enough and stable enough, then we can branch out. We have some, I think, some worthy ideas for making other things that are currently made in the industry that we don't think that people could be doing a better job. And I think some of these companies, they just, you have the left brain leaders trying to manage the right brain creative parts, and the bean counters sort of, I think, sort of squash the good ideas, and they don't let people play, throw enough spaghetti on the wall to come up with creative things. I mean, there are exceptions. I mean, ARC does a good job. Patagonia does a good job. There are companies out there doing a good job, but in general, I mean, there are a lot of things that can be done better.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as far-eyed ideas, yeah, those ideas, you work on them for years, and then something new comes up. I mean, I locked myself in the office for 6 months, and then came up with a web truss, and that's how that started. Is just trying to figure out a different way to pitch tents. So I've got another idea that I think is more of a mainstream idea. The web truss is pretty specific. In general, it's fairly. Not everybody needs a web truss, but this new way of pitching the tent, I think, is going to be a lot more interesting for a larger group of people, and I think it'll solve some problems. So, we're trying to solve problems that other people haven't. We've found some good fabrics that, for some reason, the big companies just, I don't know, they're sitting on their thumbs, doing sales projections instead of figuring out how to improve things, how to make things easier and nicer for the consumer, and cheaper. So while our tents are might be more expensive up front, I think they're actually a better value in the
Longer,
sense
yeah.
that they tend to last longer. And our big thing is to make products that work for their intended use, instead of just marketing towards the intended use, that it actually works. And that worked for us at Mountain Hardware, and it's working for us here. So and as long as we don't have to work for an absentee owner, I think we get to use those materials that allow us to accomplish those tasks.
Cool.
Is there some material out there where, like, if price was no object, if a tent could cost $4,000 that you could use right now, you're like, oh, let's throw that material in it?
Well, I'm going to go back. In the 20s, they made tents out of for mountaineering out of silk and bamboo. Okay, and when you think about it, those are two pretty amazing materials. So you could actually go back to the origins of the whole thing and say, people did a pretty good job way back in the day. But money is no object, no, because a lot of those materials are films, and I think films are somewhat limiting. I mean, we call it, the Cuban fiber.
Yeah, Dyneema composite fabric. Dyneema is a very
composites. I think
very
they're
trendy material right now.
I think there are better ways to go than that. But again, it turns out the bias stretch on fabrics allow you to get the tension around like hyperbolic paraboloids or whatever down these different shapes. And while some of these thin films, it's difficult to do that. So it's one of those things where you just have to have the right material for the right job to accomplish the right task. And we look at these things as tools. What's the right tool to get the job done? So to answer your question, I mean, people are already using the $45 a yard fabric, and there's some issues with that, because they still have to coat it so that they can weld it together, and that's a whole separate shit show unto itself. and plus the cycle times in Asia, they don't like those long cycle times for, welding things together. So they want to take shortcuts, and it's just every new technology has its own challenges in production, things to figure out. So and we've been at this long enough, and we have enough relationships where people are starting to show us materials, and we kind of have gotten to the point where we get to play with those things. When you first start out, it's hard to have access to those materials. So I've got pure. From long ago, I've got a Kevlar material that was actually a parachute. No, excuse me. It was a bomb parachute material, and that was like $50 a yard, 20 years ago. And it's an incredible fabric, but it's not going to solve our problems, and the money is not the issue. I think the trick is everybody wants to go lighter, and when do you go too close to the sun? And so those super highly constructed lightweight fabrics, especially the nylon 6.6s, they're expensive, and they're really slow on the machinery to make those high thread counts. And so, while that material is not a $45 yard or $40 yard fabric, it's an extremely technical fabric, and it just seems to work better than almost anything we found. And we sort of requested that fabric a while ago, and one day they made it for us, and it turned out to work. And it turns out that for us, that's a magic fabric that has more UV resistance and lasts longer than other fabrics. That allows us to make tents that are light and strong. So I think that's the name of the game. So I've worked with titanium tent poles. They're useless in the current configuration. I was using a hydraulic lines for the Osprey. They were making titanium tubing and the stuff that didn't pass tests. They'd send to me, and we'd play with it. A buddy of mine made some titanium ice axes. When I was at Mountain Hardware, we even flew to Ekaterinburg to go to the world's largest titanium factory to play around with titanium. So it turns out that it's a great material for some things, but not for other things. And it turns out for tent poles, it's very flexible, and it's too flexible, and that you don't really want that in general. So you want to show me something?
Yeah. Hey, I need to make this pole, but I contacted a company that makes tent poles, and they won't bend a pole this much.
Well, the reason it partially is you need a roller die machine to do that, or you need a CNC machine that'll do that, like what's it called, Super Trap or whatever. They used to be in Sacramento. They had the right machines for that, where you have an internal and external die. Part of the problem is that looks like a 7001 tube. It looks like it comes from Yunnan, maybe. And what they do is they bend it and then they anneal it. You're laughing.
It's amazing. You just look at it, you're like,
that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like,
I'm not sure I could.
here.
To me, it's a yellow tube. That's all I know.
No.
To work on my pole identification.
Yeah. Okay, so why do you need that?
There's a very specific tent that Dana Designs made. It's a tent that covers a toilet that Dana Designs made 20 years ago, and it's the best tent ever to cover a toilet on a river trip. And this end's broken. And so I need to replace this on one of our toilet tents that we absolutely love.
No, just cut it off where your hand is, and just add another piece there and glue it with some I think it's called anaerobic glue from Loctite.
Right, that's smart.
And then the problem solved. You've got your
You've got your just put a sleeve in there when you cut off both ends.
Yeah. Okay. That's a smart solution.
Martin, when you worked with Outdoor Adventures at Davis, did you do the repair stuff in the back? Were you the repair guy in the back for a while?
Never.
Oh.
No. I was a whitewater coordinator for a couple seasons.
Okay.
And actually, I helped Dennis Johnson get his job.
Oh, did you?
They wanted, actually, I got him the job, really, ultimately. What happened is they wanted to hire, we had some issues with the MU regarding paperwork. Outdoor Adventures wasn't that
Yeah.
great for following the rules, so to speak. And so they wanted to bring. So they brought all the managers together. We listened to all the prospective candidates, and everybody picked this real officious paper pusher, and so 5 of the managers voted for this other guy, and I'm like, you guys just ruined the program. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, Outdoor Adventures is about teaching students how to be leaders, and getting them out in the field and allowing them to grow and bring other people in the outdoors. Paper pushing doesn't get you in the outdoors. It makes the MU happy. And the big boss agreed with me, and they hired Dennis. But they were ready. I mean, it was a done deal. This other guy was getting hired, and I'm like, stop. You got to hire Dennis. He's the right guy for this job, because he can teach the students how to train other students so that the program thrives and moves on. So hopefully OA in the outdoor the whitewater program allowed the program to make enough money to do other things. So it sort of was the cash cow that supported everything.
No, I don't know if you know that all 3 of us were part of it. So.
Oh, okay. What did you guys do?
Well, I was the water coordinator at one point, and
before or after Larky?
Oh, way after Larky, like after Laurel. Yeah, like in the 90s. Yeah.
I guided and repaired boats for Greg Widrow.
Oh, okay. So he was. I got the job after Greg.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Greg, he's the one that turned Outdoor Adventures whitewater program into a business.
Yep.
He got it going.
And you kept it going, and a lot of people kept it going, and we all benefited from it.
That's good to hear.
You look at the alumni from that program, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, a lot of people went on to do amazing things. I mean, look at Julie Munger.
Yeah,
with her rescue stuff, and and that's what the program was designed for. And I hope it's still doing that.
Yeah,
I don't know. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't go on the South Fork very often, so I don't. Not there's anything wrong with the South Fork, but I really enjoy the Tuolumne. So, have you guys been to the launch site on the Tuolumne since they built a new ramp?
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
It's incredible.
Steve had a lot. Steve, didn't you have a lot to do? Didn't you kind of?
My initials are on that ramp.
Okay. I gave those guys. I gave Marty some the Tuolumne River Trust some money to help. Because Marty paid for a lot of that, so
yep.
I kicked in some money for that too.
Yeah, it's quite an improvement.
Yeah, so
especially when you can compare it to the old put in, like how much
the
better
old put in really was not much besides a little poison oak and a couple of rock steps here and there. Yeah, but that new one
sore backs from that old put in,
and the commercials like it so much they tend to use it too, right?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, it changed the whole thing.
Yeah. So hopefully they can figure the takeout because that's a pain in the ass.
Yep.
So we used to get the Marty's outfit every once in a while. We bribe those guys with some nice tall Guinness beers and they bring our boats up, but that hasn't happened in a while.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you guys are all involved still in OA somehow?
Oh no.
Okay.
No, I mean. So Steve ran ARDA for how long did you run ARDA for, Steve?
35 years.
Yeah, so he was running ARDA for like forever. And then Zach's got a rafting company up Northwest Rafting. And I'm still a bum, just kind of bumming around, like working for these guys when I can. So
awesome.
The 3 of us probably know each other peripherally through UC Davis, but primarily through Merrill's pool put in.
Yeah.
We've probably spent more time together there than anywhere else on the face of it.
We're all very connected to the Tuolumne, and that's how we spent the most time together for sure.
Okay, so I know one of the ARDA board members. Oh my God, I can't remember his name right now. He lives in Auburn. Glenn Carnahan.
Yeah.
So
he's another UC Davis whitewater.
Another UC Davis alum. Yeah.
He's a class act. I really enjoy. I run some business things past him every once in a while, and he's kind of sort of been an unofficial advisor for a while.
Yeah, he's a good, smart guy.
Yeah. So, it annoys me when he says that he runs Lumsden Falls without incident, and I mean that's not the part that annoys me, but that he can do it so easily, while I look at it and go, I don't want to do that. So I'm just really, my hat's off to the guy,
Yeah.
into the newer generation that can do those things.
Yep.
So,
Well, thanks for making such good tents.
well, thank you
And thanks
guys
for letting Tim educate us. It's been really, this is awesome.
Jim's awesome.
Yeah.
That would have taken me 3 times as long to explain all that, because he knows how to get through all the crap and go
Two
straight.
digressions.
Yeah, make his point. So, so our factory calls him the secret weapon. So anyway, well, thanks you guys. And
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we know how Slingfin got its name.
Yep.
And a little bit more.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting them do that.
Hey, so I have one last question for you, Tim. We were talking briefly. Why doesn't anyone make a mid with just some? What would be the disadvantage of making a mid with just a layer of what is that called? Like a
mesh
mosquito
around the bottom?
netting around the bottom. Yeah. Why doesn't anyone ever done anything like what's the if I want to do that? Why do you think people don't do that? What's the problem with that?
You know,
I'm gonna
Mark's got some thoughts about this one. We chatted about this the other day.
We made a structure called the Batwing at Mountain Hardware a while back.
Yeah.
It won some award for some ridiculous design. We ran the mesh around the perimeter, and it turns out that's a great idea in concept, but it just didn't seem to it never caught on. So I don't know if it didn't caught on because other companies didn't copy the idea and then include it, and then it became sort of an industry standard, or it was just an outlier. So Tim keeps on threatening to make a split wing.
That's our shaped tarp shelter that you were looking at earlier.
With that, and to try it out, but it just putting mesh right on the ground, where it's going to get the most abrasion, is a tough one, because it's not going to last terribly long. So, but I think it's a decent idea. I don't know that the weight is worth it, but it's been tried before, and maybe it wasn't executed well enough, or it wasn't thought through enough, or I don't know. I think it could be one of those things where it's worth another try. I think we'll eventually make one prototype to try it out, and then check out the weight. And it completely makes sense.
Okay.
And
I had a friend who did that when I worked for Outward Bound, because we weren't allowed to have tents, and so he put mesh around the bottom of his Mega Mid. So it was a tarp, and then we'd hang outside, and all the kids were getting just chewed on by mosquitoes, and we'd be hanging out in his Mega Mid with the little mesh along the bottom. It just seemed like a great idea, because I love the floorless tent. Kind of like you just throw it over your stuff and put it up, and it makes life really easy. And I was like, I don't know why no one's ever done that on a commercial scale. Like my friend, he had his mom do it or something like that.
Yeah.
Ever since I've always just been scratching my head thinking, that seems like a good idea. So
I did actually sew a mesh skirt on one of our tarps, and I tried that out on the Sierra High Route a couple summers ago, and it actually worked really well. My gut feeling for why bigger companies aren't doing it at scale is because it would be a pretty niche market. I think the main, the largest market for mids is you probably ski mountaineers, ultralight winter travel is kind of the main. I think that market is probably larger than, river guides, using mids on the beach. And for that, you don't want the mesh because it interferes with airflow and it's going to increase condensation. So I do think that I think that there are some good use cases. I think it wouldn't work as well outside of, say, the Southwest, because the humidity in the air there is really low, and like all single wall tents, kind of the Achilles heel is condensation. So mesh, you'd be surprised how much airflow is blocked by mesh. You think it could go right through, but it's not at all. It's more, it allows more air through than solid ripstop nylon. But in terms of condensation management, if you've got mesh blocking your airflow, it's actually going to significantly increase condensation. And when you're somewhere like in the Southwest where the humidity is 30% or something, you're not really going to have many issues with condensation. So adding the mesh wouldn't necessarily cut down on it, but it does just mean that the realistic usable window for those shelters, for that kind of shelter, would be a little bit smaller. So that's why I think none of the big companies have gone for it. And I think when it comes to the ultralight backpacking market or bike packing, a lot of those people want a little more modularity. So they want to be able to use just because weight is so critical. They want to, when they don't have any bugs, they don't want to be carrying any extraneous weight. So they don't want the weight of that mesh. So yeah, I mean, I think, my gut is that it's just a market size thing.
The ultralight crowd, it's really funny when I ask them about bugs, you know what their answer is? Walk faster. That's literally what they say. Oh, and Zach, so get a hold of Tom Hagerly at 10 Pole Technologies and get your dial calipers out, give them the ID and OD of the pole, tell him what tin it came from, and if he can't replace that piece, he might have a straight piece that you can buy from him, and then you just make the rest of that.
I'm gonna contact 10 Pole Technologies.
Yes, and the guy's name is his name is Tom Hagerly, but and just tell him what tin it is and give him the inside ID and OD. He probably just needs the OD, but it's usually better to give him the ID and OD, and then and he should have something there that should, if he doesn't have that curved piece, he should have the straight piece.
Awesome. I mean, this tent is the ultimate groover covering tent.
I'm all about groovers.
So
I think this is important.
I actually want to. Part of the reason I need to fix this one. That's on my list to do.
Yeah.
But also, I've been thinking about making more to sell, because I know how much outfitters need. We buy these tents that cover groovers, and they break really fast, and they're difficult to set up. This one is amazing. This design is amazing. And so
it looks like they're using the right pole diameter. I think most of them they're really flexible, and it's a structure that's tall and narrow, at the base, and so there's not much. You have to guy the shit out of it, and even then, it's just a bad wind profile. So
this one was done right. I mean, Dana Designs, they did amazing, because they do amazing work, and it's an amazing. And they weren't really into tents; they were into backpacks.
No, they bought Garuda. Right, I think they bought Garuda.
Oh yeah,
and then they assimilated Garuda, and I don't remember. I can't remember the owner's name, so I don't know if that was a Dana item or really it was
maybe a Garuda item. It said Garuda on the tent. Actually, it says it on the tent, so that makes sense.
So that's one of the Garuda items. So that just came with the company, when they bought Garuda.
But I've had these two tents for 20 years. They've worked through all the trips. And when this breaks, I replace it with something else, and that makes it 5 trips and gets broken. So I'd love to have more of these tents.
Unless you're going to make 300 of them, it's a little challenging to get the economies of scale that allow you to build them efficiently and cost effectively. But you never know.
When I make things here in Hood River, I have this person sew things in Hood River for me to make things. I make 5 and sell them for some ridiculous price.
Oh, okay.
And the people that really need them, they're very happy. We'll pay the whatever ridiculous price because we really need this item. I'm not making 300. No, I don't think there's even a need for 300.
Okay.
But I was hoping to duplicate the tents and then find some more of these poles so I can put it all together.
Yeah, 10 Pole Technologies is going to be your best bet for that.
Sweet, that's super helpful.
So, what's his name? Mike Martell at Pacific River Supply. He makes a lot of groovers.
Huh?
Yeah, you're saying there's not that big a market. He builds a shit pile of groovers.
Oh, there's a market for groovers, but there's not a massive market for groover tents.
Yeah, that's true.
Because private boaters probably don't use groover tents, but as outfitters, we like to have them for if we can't find a private place, we'll throw a tent around it. Whereas private boaters they'll be fine.
So can I really quickly ask you, have you done the Minum before?
Yeah. In Oregon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to do the Minum and the, how do you pronounce it? Wallawa or Wallawa?
Yeah. The Wallawa.
I didn't hear.
The Wallawa.
The Wallawa, yeah. I want to do that this year.
You should. And you run them. They both go into the Grand Ronde.
Right.
So
I've done that.
One or the other. Do you want to go up in the wilderness and do the do the Minum?
Yeah.
Oh, up by the lodge. Go like find the lodge and go down.
So I should probably contact you outside of this forum here or whatever this thing, and ask you, who'd recommend to fly in there or pack the gear in.
Yeah,
but I'd like to do that.
Yeah, it's Yep.
So sorry about that. Just every opportunity to gather more intel is a good thing, right?
That's so interesting. Somebody from California wants to do this eccentric run in the far northeast of Oregon.
Well, the most eccentric run I've done is the Escalante or Escalante, whatever you want to call it, which it was a big snow year out there, and it was running 500 CFS like all June or something in 2006, and that's what was that's sort of one of the most out there rare trips that you can do, just because there's never any water. But anyway, take care. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Well, we've gone for a while.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's ready to go. But Tim, thanks for taking time to talk today. This has been really interesting for sure. Like my takeaway. So before I talked to you, I thought tents were just things you like made poles and they just magically worked. And the more I hear you talk about it, the more I hear talk about condensation and airflow and the fabrics. It's really complicated.
Turns out there's a lot to think about. Yeah. It's not hard to make bad tents.
I think
there's nothing more valuable than a good tent.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, man, that's not where you want to cut corners. If you need a tent, you need a tent.
No, it's when we design tents, we think of it as, we approach it as from the perspective of safety equipment.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. That's great. Yeah. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate your time, Tim. This was fantastic. Learned so much.
Really fun.
I'm excited to refurbish my old tents, go get some silicone caulk and some mineral oil and see if I can get some more life out of those
things. Dude, just buy one.
Don't say it, Zach. Don't say it.
Just buy one.
No, they don't make the silicone magnets anymore.
You don't need, Aaron. You don't need that one. Aaron,
time for a new one, Aaron.
Yeah, get with this. They sell one for. It even says for river runners. Which one's it called again? The Portal
Indus
too.
No. I don't want a floorless tent. I don't want a floorless tent.
You don't want a floorless tent. You're gonna love this tent.
Yeah.
No, get.
Talk to me about a pro deal.
Don't bring that up on the show where everybody's going to contact you about a pro deal. Make Aaron pay full price. Make Aaron pay full price. No, my middle name is Pro Deal. Aaron's middle name is Free.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, you don't want that anymore. Oh, you're getting rid of that? Oh, I'll take that.
Yeah. Like what's going to happen is I'm going to buy a tent from you, and Aaron's going to say, "Hey, what tent did you have before?
Yeah, can I have
it for free? We're gonna throw it away." Is what
I'll just go poke around. What's going on with this old tent over here, Zach? And then he'll be like, "Oh yeah, hey, yeah." He's like, "Oh, it's got a rip here. Oh, I can fix that. Can I have that?" So actually, But no, thank you. I learned so much. It was incredible. This is really fun. Thanks for spending time.
Yeah,
and thank Martin as well for hopping in there and
we appreciate it.
This is great. This is really fun. So
if any of you guys have questions or anyone watching this has any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them. My email address is just my name. It's tim@slingfin.com. So feel free to have people reach out if they want to know more about materials or tent design all the stuff I said I wrote articles about it and it's all on our website too. So if people
your articles are amazing. I learned so much.
And the videos. I learned how to repair my bungee cord the other day. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
I've been trying to pull that little tip off the end of my tent pole for years, and I go, "Oh, you just untwist it."
Yeah.
Thank you.
I actually just thought of the most important question. You don't have to answer it. But why do the tents never fit in the tent bags?
Because the manufacturers want them to look good on the shelves at REI. They want people to see the tents on the shelves and be like,
Ooh, nice, neat.
that tent is tiny. It's going to be light. That's the one I want.
Are your tent bags bigger, or do you just look on the shelves too?
We don't sell them on shelves. We just sell from our website. So we make them as big as they need to be.
That's good.
Well, good answer. Good answer.
It is frustrating though when you can't get that tent back in the bag.
Yeah, no, it's
That is amazing.
it's like the easiest thing to do, and it just improves your experience of using
Yes.
the tent so much. And it's just like, come on, guys, just like
Yeah.
think about the user for a
Yes.
freaking second, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
All right, Aaron, you gotta shut this one down.
Well, if you haven't liked and subscribed, do that stuff. We're not here on Friday, correct? Not. We'll be back next week on Tuesday. Probably another question answer. We got more questions answered. You guys, thanks for tuning in. And man, there's a bunch of comments here that we didn't get today. I feel bad, but I actually have to go too. I gotta go. I gotta go. But anyways, yeah. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it, and have a good one.
Hey, Aaron,
Thanks,
before I
Tim.
go,
See you guys.
I have one more question for Aaron.